A little bit about my background, so you know where I'm coming from. My grandfather told me that people came from all over the world and brought ideas to this country. You know, every country. And he said that I think if you pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it, that'd be the way to go for the future. If you pledge allegiance to one country, you're kind of cutting yourself off. So I think all of us have relatives that have come from different countries, okay? So if you say, like the big dumb Swede, get a big dumb Swede or dumb Polak to clean out your cellar, or a drunken Irishman, you know, or a chiseling Jew, or a goddamn Wop. There's a goddamn everybody in this world, you know? And the world you live in, you know how women are, and women say, well, you know how men are. Well, they aren't in any special way. It depends on where they're brought up. So when I was a kid, I want to know what men and women would be like if they weren't too contaminated by civilization. Okay? You can take all the pictures you want. And so I worked my way on a boat to Hawaii and then to the Solomon Islands and then to Tahiti. But the Chinese already owned all the businesses there. They had business set up, stores, and that was already contaminated. So I found some out islands called the Tuamotu chain. This is 65 years ago. When I got there, everybody walked around nude. It was normal to that culture. And I never saw a male stare at a female body. Can you understand that? Is there trouble? They were swimming nude ever since they were that high. They look at the girl's eyes when they talk to her. Never the body. Never, hey, get a load of that shit. That's learned in this culture. Every book written in this culture is culture bound. It has nothing to do with reality. It's where this culture is. So what I'm going to try to tell you is that 90% of what you've been brought up to believe in is strictly bullshit. Okay? Okay. Now, when I was on the islands, I brought mirrors and beads to placate the island. I was going to give them to the natives to show I come as a friend, not to take anything away from them. But they were already in my thatched hut after I built it, giving out my mirrors and beads to one another without my permission. And I was a little confused, you know. So I said, well, what's going on here? And they said, you have too many. I really did. But I really didn't understand it because I was a jerk brought up in a civilized country. But about 3 days later, I did understand it. The men and women, the older men, were pulling in nets full of fish, and they threw fish to anyone standing there. Not you owe me a buck, you owe me $3. They just threw fish. And coconuts were so available, and bananas, that nobody sold anything. They just gave you things. Does that make sense? Right. Then the missionaries came. They set up a tent. Those of you that are religious might be shocked. They set up a tent, and they told the girls to wear T-shirts when they came to church. And the girls had no idea why. It's like me covering your nose, because you don't expose your nose. It's the same world. So anyway, the girls brought out the T-shirts they brought them from the States. They had them with them. And they gave them to the girls, not to the men. You know. And the girls got 2 holes in the T-shirts. They weren't comfortable. Okay? And the missionaries were confused. The missionaries have a fixed point of view. They create God, man creates God in his own image. Not just the opposite, what you read in the Bible. And God is more like man than God. God gets pissed off, angry, creates floods, disease, all this. And then if you don't follow his teachings, you burn eternally. That's not God, that's a psychopath. If you're religious, you're going to be hurt. You can leave now if you want to. Because all religion is low-grade stuff. Terrible stuff. You know, Noah's Ark would have to be a mile long. What would you do with all the shit of all the animals? You know, flies galore in there. Where did he get the polar bear from? The stories are so ridiculous that Moses raised his wand and parted the Red Sea. God could have put the Jews on the other side without parting the Red Sea. You know, all the stories are awful. Now, as I understand, if you have children, most of you anyway, would try to make them smarter and better than you are, and in every way you are able to. And if they got too smart, they leave you.
That's what's
Think
supposed to happen. We're
So-
supposed to prepare.
Like most of you, or some of you may have left your parents because they lived in the past. Okay? I'm not against anybody, I'm just telling you the way it is. So anyway, after I was on the island a while, I asked the natives if they would help me build an outrigger canoe. I know how to build one better than they do, but I wanted to establish, you know, I come as like one of you. And they got in a huddle and didn't say a thing and they left. About a week later, they brought a canoe over and they put it down from my thatched hut. They just said, it's for you, for your use. So I said, well, what do you want? Do you want me to do anything for you? No, they didn't know what that meant. What do you want? I brought that with me from where I came, you know. And they didn't want anything. Anyway, it appears about a week and a half later, I heard some rustling outside my thatched hut, and I looked out, and they were sneaking off with a canoe that they gave me. I didn't understand that, so I stepped out and I said, what's going on? I said, you no use. It's true, I didn't use it. So they took it back. Of course, I was a little confused, but I got to understand all that later. And they were sane in many ways, saner than we are. And I wanted you to understand that people reflect their culture. Did anything I say bother you up to now? Okay. So I was talking about my experience with different people raised in the South Pacific. They were brought up in a world where they were very different and they wore no clothing at all. This was 65 years ago. I don't know about today. But anyway, they wore no clothes and I never saw a male stare at a female body that was brought up there. They were swimming nude ever since they were this high. So they had no curiosity or anything. But if you covered the nose of a female, I can assure you, if you showed a male half your nose, he would have to loosen his collar. He was brought up in that kind of culture. Do you understand? So everything that we think with and think about is pumped into your head ever since you're this high. You're an American citizen. You're a Catholic. You're a Lutheran. Pumped into your head. Who loves you more than anybody? I don't know, Mommy. Your mommy and daddy. They pump that in your head. What's the greatest country in the world? This country. That happens to all people all over the world. They're all fucked up. So I'm not using the term normal people. I mean fucked up. I mean they're vanished. By the way, there's no bad language. Because if you bake a pie, I don't know, and you drop it, you might say fiddly-dee. He might say shit. That means I'm sorry I dropped the pie. Nothing to do with fecal matter. You know what I mean? So there's no bad words, it's just the way you're brought up, okay? In the army, if a guy borrows some money from another guy, he says, I can't pay you this Saturday. He says, fuck it, pay me when you can. Well, fuck you means I don't agree with you sometimes. It depends on how it's used. It's one word that can mean many things. Bullshit means I can't accept what you're saying. So there's no bad language. When a person says, well, that's not a nice way to talk. Well, what is a nice way to talk? Even scientists are full of shit. And you wouldn't expect that of me. But I'm telling you they are, as long as they work for every separate country. If they work on nuclear weapons, bombers, our universities are better equipped than ever. They have the best microscopes, the best weighing devices, and the wars are getting worse. The bombs are getting worse. Nuclear is getting worse. The cobalt bomb, there's a flicker bomb, it's a bright light goes on and off. It's out in space, and it gives people epileptic seizure. By light going on and off real fast. So we're not civilized yet. As long as there's war, police, prisons, crime, we're not civilized. As long as we spend most of our money on weapon systems. Even war, all wars are corrupt. Let me give you an example. If they take your life, or they ask you to put up your life to defend this country, and say he does, I think if he does that, and all the volunteers do that, we should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. No one sells airplanes for $1 million a piece with all kinds of sensors on it, submarines, aircraft carriers. War is big business. It always had been. It always made a lot of money. Am I bothering anybody? Total conscription, men, machines, material, and money for the duration. After the war, give it back. They say, buy war bonds, that brings Johnny home faster. Why wait for him to buy war bonds? Take his fucking money and bring the boys home. If you take their lives, don't you understand that? So if you want to talk to soldiers, if there are any here, are there any soldiers here?
Marines.
Marines, okay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
Does it bother you?
Oh, no.
So when you talk to Marines, are you still in the service?
No.
Good.
Me and him were
Talk to
together.
Marines against the war, talk to them about total
Oh, yeah.
conscription.
Oh, yeah.
Not that the Army is full of shit, although it is.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anybody else is more full of shit than them.
Okay. You guys are amazing. Maybe that's why you're here. Anyway, it's harder to get to normal people. Normal means under the influence of propaganda. All newspapers, all television stations sell time. They're businesses. They don't have guys like me on the air because that disrupts their business. You understand that? So, although in foreign countries, they invited us to China, Dubai, we've been there. We've been to Dubai, and they wanted me to design a new city there, and the tallest building in the world, and a lot of other things. So I said, I want to look around first and see what you're doing. Well, they laid out the red carpet, gave flowers to Roxanne, brought the 40-foot limousine over to us at the airport, picked us up, showed us around, fed us well. And then they asked a question. What do you think of our society? I went like that. It's not going anywhere. They said, well, we're building cities in the sea, not cities, they're islands, artificial islands, Palm Island. You know about that?
Yeah.
And it's for tourists mainly. And they sold most of the houses on the island for $1 million. So the sales were so great, they put houses in between. And then now they're being sued because they're making a slum of it. They're filling it up. Anyway, they said to me, what do you think? I said, it's not going to go anywhere if you depend on tourists. Because the tourists will stop flocking there as soon as the economic system goes, which is a short time from now. Well, they disagreed with that. I said, bringing architects there and engineers and putting up every building a different size, like New York, is chaos. But if you're brought up in New York, you might even sing, New York, New York. I love it. If you're brought up in Chile or any place, you love it, no matter where you're brought up. So the problems are, what is a useful direction for society to take? Well, this is a direction I'm going to point out. If enough people like the Venus Project, what the Venus Project hopes to do is declare all of the world's resources as the common heritage of all the world's people. The Earth and all its resources. No more separate nations. So anyone can go anywhere. Before the states joined together, they used to stake out their territory. They used to fight. They had militias. They would fight. This is our territory. Oh no, you're intruding. When all the states joined together, the government worked out the lines of the states, and they agreed, and that was the end of territorial disputes. If you want the end of war, you must declare the earth common heritage. If few nations control most of the earth's resources, I don't care how many treaties you sign, how many laws you make, there will be war. Do you understand that? Okay. By the way, since you're new here, if you disagree with anything, interrupt me. Interrupt me if you disagree or don't quite understand it. It's perfectly all right. If you don't do that, I consider you impolite. It's polite to interrupt me if you don't understand it. Okay. So, not only that, but you must take away all the artificial boundaries made by people. And you must grow food without artificial coloring, flavoring. You can't accelerate animal growth by giving hormone shots, because if they speed cell multiplication and a chicken grows faster and a cow grows faster, those fast cells are bad for humans. So they know that cancer is on the increase. And so cigarettes are cancer sticks, whether you smoke or not. And why do they allow it? Because the government makes a lot of money on cigarettes, a lot of money on whiskey, beer, all that crap, okay? And a lot of money on drugs, drug business. Now, there used to be a book, which I'm sure most of you never heard of, 100 Million Guinea Pigs. If you heard of it, raise your hand. 1, 2.
Because of you.
That book pointed out the drug companies, what they're doing. Why don't they find out natural ways of healing people, like celery juice cuts down on high blood pressure, but there's no money in it. A pill you can get $2 for. So the monetary system is basically corrupt. You can pay people off, senators, governors, make money. As long as they make money at it, you're never going to get the truth.
Viagra, for instance, was developed for pulmonary hypertension, but when they found out it had a certain side effect, they forgot all about the people with pulmonary hypertension and marketed it for fun.
Yes, well, I understand that. Okay. From my point of view, people always ask me, what are you going to do with the criminals? Here's my answer. Every time you go to a supermarket and buy a box of Wheaties or anything, open that box, it's way down in the box. What do you mean by criminal? A lawyer would be considered a criminal in the future. The Supreme Court judges would be arrested as criminals, all of them, because they don't go into the background of a person. What made them that way? If you're brought up in the South, you're going to say, I'm going to give me a goddamn nigger, I'll go and kick his ass. Where do you get that from? The South. You get that from the subgroup you're brought up with. You're not born that way. You're not born with bigotry and prejudice. You learn it. It's so automatic you don't even feel it. Goddamn sweet. A dumb sweet. So you got all that you learn in your environment. And when girls say, well, you know how men are, men take you out on a date 3 or 4 times or sooner, then they try to get in your blouse, you say it's getting laid, I hardly know. The same old shit. They all behave the same way. Men like to fuck because they can get rewarded for it. There are other guys that say, how many women did you screw this month? He says, 10. He's not looked upon bad. He's looked upon as Don Juan. The more women you screw, the greater you are. Women, if they screw around with 2 guys, they're tramps. Who wrote the book? The men. They're full of shit, too. They're full of shit. It's your motion pictures, your radio stations, your TV shows, all your movies are bullshit. They give you no information. Disney World is a place of entertainment. Disney World, a World's Fair on the future would make people smarter. They go in a certain way and come out much brighter. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm talking this way because I really care about people. I really would like to see them advance. Let me tell you what I mean by advance. Children's rooms would have small furniture. The toilet bowl, everything would be small. It's wrong to bring up children in a house of giants. It really is. And the furniture should grow with the children. And the children should be brought up by parents who go to school first to learn how to raise children. They don't know how. They just have a lot of kids. A guy comes up to me, I have 8 kids. I say, what are they for? I that question, what are they for? This is what we don't know, what they don't give us in school. We don't know how to live, how to relate to one another, how to share values, and how to disagree without getting angry. This is what's missing, and that's everything. Your schools are all bullshit. All your universities are managed. All news is managed news. It's released in terms of the values they want you to have. When I speak at a university, I don't pull my punches. I speak, for example, they invited us to Iceland. When I got there, they gave me 8 minutes. I couldn't do anything in 8 minutes. They invited me to, China. When we got to China, they said I would speak to 1,500 students, science students at their schools. But that never came off, because the guy that invited us there gave us return tickets, but he didn't give anybody else return tickets. And he ran away with the money. And they caught him in Las Vegas with a suitcase full of money. Sent them back to China. I don't know how. But anyway, nothing happened in China. Then they invited us to Dubai, which I told you about, and they wanted us to design new cities, new buildings. And I said, why? They said, well, we wanted to be the makers of the tallest building in the world. I said, why? They're like children. They're little tiny children. And I said, your system's not going to work. Everybody gets off at 4 o'clock, and the freeways in Dubai are jammed. If you stagger the calendar, so 1/7 of the population's off every day, your beaches are never jammed. You go to Key Biscayne, those of you that do, they have to build new freeways. It's so jammed. Weekends. But during the week, it's not. So if you stagger the calendar, you don't have that problem. There are over 2 million cars sit still for 8 hours a day in America while you're at work. So if you had automobiles that were for public use, I can see on top of that cabinet what automobiles would look like. They have impact sensors on them, so when they're 30 feet away at a given speed, the brakes go on. If you got mad at me, you couldn't even drive your car into my car. They're the same thing that makes a light go on when you walk up to your house. Proximity unit. There need not be any automobile accidents. If you know where Radio City is, the Empire State Building, they take 1 million people up and down that never crash. The elevators never crash. You see, you have to take my word for when a lot of you don't remember, there was a time when human beings used to operate elevators. Used to turn the crank. They never quite got to the floor. They had to walk it up and down. And today the elevator tells you not only step back, if the door hits you, it backs off you. So technology is what made us different and made us, put us ahead of many other people. It's not politics. Politicians offer nothing. They're businessmen and lawyers. They don't even know how to solve problems. So I want to give you an example of problem solving so you'll understand what I mean. Would you, if I can find it, get me that conical shaped building up there on top shelf? Yeah, thank you.
This one?
Yeah, that one, the cone. Thank you very much. What happens when the government finds there's going to be a bad hurricane? They tell you to leave your house because it's going to be dangerous. So I've stopped the cars and say, where are you going? I don't know, but I'm going. If the government built this, no hurricane can pick up an inverted cone. The air will whirl around it, but it can't lift the roof off. Do you understand that? The windows are like airplane windows. Airplanes travel 600 miles an hour, so you need to worry about the wind. Then there's a turbine. That is a unit that's blown around by the wind. That keeps all the food in the refrigerator going, and it keeps the lights going. But if you get a hurricane, you might get a power outage for a week. All the food spoils and all the refrigerators. Do you understand what I'm saying? This. If we made these all through Florida, and use it during the week for recreation or public meetings or anything you want. This is what I mean by what do you do about it. It's not enough to criticize a country without offering a possible alternative. There are beds that come down all around here. There's food for so many hundred people, and you have them all through the West Indies, wherever there are tornadoes. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Not the government says you'll have to leave. Where the hell they go? Now, there's an airplane there, blank. If you mind, you don't mind, on the bottom shelf. Thank you very much. Is there anybody that never flew in an airliner? Okay, thank you. When you fly in an airliner, they tell you that under your seat is an inflatable unit. It's a life raft. You take it out, you put it on, and you try to get out of the airplane. Assuming you get out, if it's in the North Sea, you live about 12 minutes in the water. Okay? When I worked for Northrop, I showed him this. This was 60 years ago. He said, too far out. Anyway, the passenger section disengages. You know what I mean? If you land in the water, it can disengage and float. And there's food and everything in there, and nothing that'll burn. If you're coming in for landing, say the landing gear doesn't come down. This thing doesn't come down. The minute that happens, all the fuel is blown out automatically. Reason people are not killed in most crashes. They're killed by fire. Do you understand that? So pilot doesn't have to turn a switch. Fuel is blown out first by inert gas, like CO2. Once you blow the fuel out, you glide in, just like this space shuttle. You glide in. Now the airplane has other factors. Sometimes the plane will land and sometimes the brakes fail. That plane can plow into people, the hangars, buildings, everything. The minute the brake fails, that turns the arresting gear, comes up on the runway. Looks like a net on aircraft carriers, which I suggested years ago. When the net comes up, the plane can't overshoot the ship. That should be on all public runways. So everybody doesn't understand what I'm talking about? I don't mind repeating. It's a net that comes up, made of stainless steel, that stops the plane where it's at. But the airport is a separate institution. Eastern Airlines is a separate institution. So you have all these different businesses. Businesses to make as much money as they can with the least provisions they can give you. That's the purpose of business, profit. But let's say you're a good businesswoman, very kind. She has 500 women working for her, and she decides to build a playground on the ground for the children, the women that work there. She also helps people with insurance, medical care. I can tell you, no one will invest in your company.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a very. I would only be a good businesswoman in one sense.
Yeah.
In another sense,
All right.
not good at
You
all.
understand? They can't get investors. If you invest in advertising, new production method, they'll invest in your company. But if you have humanistic inclinations, you're not good for business. Do you understand that? If the doctors in the old days used to spend a lot of time with people, used to spend, it would cost you $3 to get a doctor to visit you. Now, today, they want the doctors in big institutions to move you through 20 minutes, no more, right through. Or give you a pill, come call me Wednesday, you know. Now, the doctors in the future will be in the middle of the city system. If you people will be kind enough to remove some of that stuff, I can see this in the future. I'm going to try to give you an idea how it works. You can put that back on the shelf. It seems that a long time ago, women in America, and England, and France marched to try to get public library. Men were not that interested. Anyway, they had rotten eggs thrown at them. The same thing. Everything new and novel always had resistance. This is the public library in this city. Now, the women fought for a public library, and the people that gave them opposition said, if you make books available to people, they won't buy books from bookstores. Anybody didn't hear that? It would interfere with the free enterprise system. But anyway, the women won out and they got the library in. People read a little bit and they bought more books than ever because they knew more. They wanted to know even more. So right here I would have a camera center where anybody can come in and check out any kind of camera for your use. It's there for your use. Here you can check out any kind of musical instrument. It's cheaper to give kids things than put them in jail. It costs $50,000 to keep a kid in jail a year. It doesn't come out any better. $75,000 for an adult. Privatization of prisons is big business. So the longer you keep them, the more you make. So you understand everything's available without a price tag, like the library. Everything, all the necessities of life, your home, everything is made available. The earth wasn't put here for the Greeks or the Swedes. It's here for all people. If you're religious, fine. But I'm not religious. I just say if we use the earth intelligently, we can all live better than Bill Gates. There's a hard thing to get through your head, so I'm going to try to prove it to you. The middle class American today lives better than kings in the past. They have air conditioning in their car. No king ever had that. So if you turn science loose, meaning innovation, turn it loose. Don't try to dig up nickels and dimes for heart disease, to do medical research in stem cells. We give every lab whatever the hell they need. We do when war comes, we give you airplanes and bombs, with machine guns and sensors and radar, everything. Men, soldiers, are killing machines. They're not taught anything else. They destroy. Now, the cost of World War II, I'm sure you've seen pictures of Germany bombed out and France and all that. That's a hell of a lot of destruction in trillions of dollars. If you use that war money of all the nations building armies, protecting their private territory, you could have housed everyone on earth, wiped out the slums, build hospitals all over the world, and give labs whatever the hell they need. That's what a resource-based economy is. Sure, there are people that think the free enterprise system is good, because they are the advantaged people within the system. But the average person is not. They're used by the system. Lawyers would disappear in the future. I'm sorry if you study law. Businessmen would disappear. Bankers, advertising, gone. No parasitic industry and all politics, gone. Now let me tell you what happened. It's in this book. All politics. The second picture up there, second to me I'd point to it, yeah. Would you mind pointing to it? That's the government of the future. No people. Here's how it works. If you have a computerized system with image screens, and you have, say, 6 satellites around the Earth, you get a hologram. You can project a hologram of the Earth. That's a virtual image of the Earth. And you can see every hurricane, the temperature all over the world, and with infrared cameras for 3,000 miles out in space, when you take photographs of the Earth, plant diseases show up as red all over the Amazon, wherever plants are sick. So here you have a whole picture of what's going on Earth, not some politician's view. You'd have every hurricane, every climate all over, and you'd have a model in your home of that unit, small. And all you do is touch it, and it tells you what the depth of the ocean, the height of the mountains, the population, just by touching it. How many of you have ever seen that? I've got a model of it like that. Yeah, thank you, Rosie.
Welcome to the Touch the globe for information. The Pacific Ocean. United States. The Gulf of Aden.
Do the music from the different.
Anyway,
That's
it'll give you the distance of every country, how many miles,
That's
how
awesome.
much time it takes to get there by air, everything.
Goodbye for now.
So if you want that at home, that'd be terrific. But there's other things that you don't know about, most people anyway. Shape memory materials. How many of you know about it?
Say it again.
Shape
Shape
memory.
memory.
Shape memory.
Okay. There are materials that remember today. They remember the shape you make them in. if you take a wire made of nickel and titanium, 50-50 percentage of that, equal. If you vary it, it responds differently. So if you take that wire and you spell out with the wire Jesus Christ, thank you. And you spell out Jesus Christ, and you straighten out the wire and put it on the table, and use a hidden heater under the table that'll go back to Jesus Christ. You can do the following. Now this is the wire. So you come up front, you want to see it.
Right, I
Do you have an
I can plug
extension?
it in over here somewhere.
Okay. This is nickel and titanium. It's taken as a wire and they wind it around a form. And they hold it in place by either ceramic or insulated clamps. Thank you. And they heat it to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, let it cool, and it remembers that shape. So I don't know you got a camera, would you mind pulling that out way beyond its elastic limit? Far out as you can pull it. That's right, way out.
Give me one then, though. Yeah.
Now I'd like you to, okay, that's good enough. It's not like it was, so I will do this, I will twist it, but you do it. You twist it, bend it, do whatever you want, but don't let it get caught in itself. If it gets caught in itself, it will not return. So I want to show you how the memory works. Okay. We're going to twist it too, because just pressing it is one thing, distorting it. Okay. Now it's going to return to its original shape, because it has a built-in memory. Nobody invented it. It was discovered accidentally. A metallurgist was mixing different metals together, nickel and titanium in Sweden, and he bent it, put it on a table near a heat lamp, and it went back to straight again. And he scratched his head. Nobody ever invented anything. I'm going to back it up too. Now here it is. You can all see it, and hot air will make it go back a little slower. I don't know what happened, but is the switch on that? It's not hot. Okay, yeah. Okay? It's not a trick. People think I'm using reverse photography. But this is a metal with a memory. They now make a fabric with a memory. Most doctors don't even know about it. It's suture fabric to do stitching. And the doctor ties a surgical knot. Then he straightens it out, cuts the skin, sticks it through, and the heat of the body causes it to tie a surgical knot. Can you understand that? No? Is there anybody that doesn't understand this? Fine. This only has one memory. But if you took, say, 3 inches of that wire and gave it one memory and then welded 40 of them together with 40 different memories, you can do fantastic things. So, I'm saying that if you made a dome building of the future with its new materials that we have, and we use strips of wire, it isn't only nickel and titanium, other metals have similar characteristics. And you spread that throughout the building and made a dome, then flatten it out. Ship 10,000 houses to India flat. When you get there, connect 2 electrodes. A minute and a half goes back to a full dome. That goes for furniture like that chair, red one back there, orange. If you made a furniture, compound curve, flatten them out, ship them out, you can get a lot of buildings on the boat as discs. So everybody doesn't understand? Anything I say that you don't get, interrupt me, because I don't mind telling you over again. So Jimmy Carter, with his hammer and nails, is not going to house anyone. It's either a jerk or very stupid or poorly informed as to what's new. Your senators and congressmen should be at the forefront of technology. They tell you to write your congressman. How the hell did he get the job? It's like writing to Harpo Marx. You know, they can't offer anything. They don't know anything. They don't know anything physical. So that, I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, Communist, Socialist, they don't know what to do. When Castro got into power, he cleared out all the hotels and all the gambling casinos that were owned by Americans. Most of the industries, the pineapple industries, the sugarcane, was owned by American businessmen. So he kicked them all out and he gave it back to the Cuban people. But thereafter he didn't know what to do. He wasn't technical. So I'd help any country, Haiti, Cuba, anybody. It doesn't make any difference. I went to Cuba to see if I can help them. And I said, I'd like to meet with Fidel Castro. I said, he's cutting the sugarcane with the working class. You know, one of the boys. So I went to the University of Havana, and they spoke to me in their accent. They said, Mita Freco, we don't have the technology you have in America, so we can't move. We cannot move too fast. I said, all you do is jack up a car and connect to the rear wheel a driving belt, and you can drive your sugarcane through. Oh, you have to meet Fidel. Yeah, where is he? So the university was making all kinds of notes. Then I said, look at those men carrying the bananas down the hill. All you have to do is hang a clothesline up, hang the bananas on, and they'll come down bringing the boxes up automatically. You have to see Fidel. This is the way they spoke. They meant well, but they didn't know what to do. Their technicians, their engineering students are all brought up like our engineering students. They build warplanes, nuclear weapons. Even Einstein was a jerk in that area. He gave certain formulas, like Yuri, well, I will get to him later. But there were many people in science that worked on the atom bomb, the Manhattan Project, and they hoped, Einstein hoped they wouldn't use it. He hoped they would demonstrate it like 100 miles off the coast of Japan. Say, we have this terrible weapon, we'd rather not use it. And he believed they'd do that. So did Oppenheimer. He really believed they'd demonstrate it first. And when he told Truman, he was very disappointed. Truman says, I don't want that guy around anymore. Truman was an asshole. All your presidents were super stupid, all the way back to Washington. I'm sorry to say these things. I know you're brought up with the other bullshit. Okay. When you leave here and you get your package of films and videos, show them to other people. If you don't, nothing will happen. I can't make it happen. I have no power at all. Anyway, when they invited us to Turkey, I said, I have to have at least an hour and a half. They said, you got it. And when I had an hour and a half, NBC, CBN, every broadcasting they had came down and photographed the whole thing for hours and days. And then they said, Jacques, we'd like to start a Venus project in Turkey. If they gave me time to explain what it is, some people think it's some form of communism. Well, communism uses money, it has banks, it has social elitism, it has police, it has prisons, and it has people that don't know a damn thing about technology that run the show. So it has nothing in common with communism. Here's how it works. The Department of Agriculture is one of those units you see around the earth there. You know, any one of those units would be the Department of Agriculture. Its electrical tentacles go into the soil. If your water table drops, that pumps water out there. If the nutrients change, it pumps nutrients out there. You don't need a guy with a telephone saying, Mr. President, we're having a terrible drought out here. And the president says, how bad is it? He says, well, if it continues, thousands will be homeless and without food. So the president flies over. He says, so you do have a drought. So what? You don't want a guy to fly over. You don't want to write your congressman. What do you have to write your congressman for women's rights? When you fly in an airliner today, you don't have to write the pilot, say you've been flying at an angle for an hour and a half straight up. He knows his business. The guy, if the guy says you're going to Hawaii, you say, but there's icebergs out there, you're going the wrong direction. The guy says, gee, I never thought of that. The people flying airplanes know their navigation and they know how to fly. And the steward people that serve you know how to rig up the life rafts and everything, at least to the extent that they're trained. But politicians don't know anything. I mean that, nothing. You ask Obama, what do? He gives money to the people that created the problem in the first place. The banks and the private institutions. Is he a nice guy? He may be, I don't know, but he's not very bright. Because if you give money to the automobile companies, since they can't operate and compete with Japanese cars, let me see a blueprint of the car you intend to turn out. Does it get more miles per gallon than a Japanese car? Is it less expensive? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it, even if you turn it out. So you don't have a government that knows what to do. Oh, by the way, this is the end of the economic system. It's going downhill. All these priming of the pump is not going to work. It's happening all over the world. That's why the Venus Project, people are listening to it. 50 million people know about the Venus Project now. And they're talking about it. And they're trying to build one in Australia. They said, we're going to build one cooperative community. And they didn't consult us. It's not going to work. As a kid, I read a book called 125 Utopias and Why They Failed. That's what you have to read first. You have to know why things don't work. If you put normal people in the city, it won't work. You have to go to an orientation center first. Don't let that scare you. Orientation means how it works. This is the distribution centers, there's the library. If you want a musical instrument, you go here. And you don't have, that's the end of juvenile crime. It's the end of most crime. If people have access to the necessities of life, they don't steal. Let me describe that. There's a place in Jamaica called Ocho Rios, where 8 rivers come together, beautiful water down in the mountains. And nobody ever comes at night and fills a canteen and steals it. There's so much water there, they don't even think about it. The air you breathe is so valuable, you can't live without it. But there's so much of it, no one can privatize it. And yet, today you have to pay a buck for a glass of water. It comes in a bottle which semi-contaminates it, plastic. So anyway, you don't live in a society that can go anywhere. Now, this is for those that were in the Army. I don't know if you know this. The U.S. Army dumped 65 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami. How many knew about that? About 40 years ago.
I heard you say it in one of the videos.
That's it. How can you be in the Army and love this country and dump nerve gas into the ocean? The Army are made up of obedient people. They do anything they're told to do. They don't, never taught to think in any law school. In fact, man cannot think or reason. That's another bullshit thing. I'm going to try to prove it to you, okay? If I fail, you have to let me know, okay? In our schools today, as far as I know, they do something like this. They say, this is how we spell cat. Children, you know. And the kid comes back with something like this. And the teacher says, that's wrong. Those words tell you nothing. That's wrong. Think about it. They don't tell you anything. Well, you should spell it that way. It doesn't tell you anything either. That's not what I told you. That doesn't tell you anything either. So the kid says to me, what is it? And I say, well, instead of this K, I say to the kid, you're very close. You're very close. But we just changed this character to this. Don't say you're wrong, because you say you're wrong, it creates a storm, bad feeling in the kid. He doesn't know what's wrong, you know, and so Though that kind of language, don't forget, our language was designed thousands of years ago in England, and it was never very good. And the language is not good for communication. We usually talk at each other rather than to one another. Is there anyone who doesn't understand what I'm saying? We talk at each other. You know, people meet each other, how's the family? Very good. How are you? Very good. But if you say, I'm not too good, I need $3,000 for an operation. Can you let me have it? I said, no. Then why do you ask me how I am? What is all this bullshit? And on weekends, they say, have a nice weekend. Why not have a nice life? Not just a weekend. See, people talk automatically at each other. They don't talk to each other because they're never taught how to talk to each other. When girls talk to girls, when guys talk to girls, I'm always amazed. Hey, you're cute. I like your dimple. Nobody talks to me that way. No guy requests go, I like your dimple when you smile. Your eyes, you're so soft and warm. What is that bullshit for? Softening up operations. I want to get laid. No other reason. Otherwise associate with men. Because men have more in common with one another. If you don't understand me, if you put 10 men and 10 women in a room, they'll mix. After they're married, say 3 years, put them in a room, the women go to the room. Men don't give a shit about tangy lipstick. Or they don't care about pictures of your kids or anything like that. They really don't care. So people never learn that. They're always polite. Polite means swallow it. Okay? And when and if the Venus Project comes in, the divorce rate will soar. Because a lot of people are trapped. They got kids, they got guys working, how will I live if I leave? So they live a miserable life. So the divorce, in the future, people will not marry. Nobody has the right to pronounce you man and wife. Who the hell is he? Some guy with a white collar says, I pronounce you man and wife? Where the hell did that come from?
Power message.
And so if you don't get one, the other guy said, that'll cost you $3,000 to split up. He said, well, I haven't got it.
Then you get go home.
You have a very predatory culture. If he bangs into my car, he makes money straightening out the dents. If I get a root canal problem, he makes $1,500 working on my dent. If everybody is a predator, they all make money on all human misery. You got cancer, it's just gonna break you. You understand that? I don't care how much money you got in the bank, it can wipe you out. So the whole world become one gigantic business institution. As long as there's banks and money, you'll always have corruption. Now, we do sign treaties with other nations, but if that treaty doesn't serve our interest, we violate it. You can look it up, don't take my word for it. Treaties are violated by the thousands. Now, some asshole said, say no to drugs. Now, that doesn't stop anything. You don't say no to drugs. Let's say it's like taking a Southern and say, stop speaking with a Southern accent. You know, you can. And a person that's brought up in a given country, you say, thinks a certain way, the way they wanted you to think. That's what they bring you up. They bring you up to sing America the Beautiful, all those Pledge Allegiance to the flag. So when I was about 13 or 14, I refused to pledge allegiance to the flag. The teacher did not ask me any question, grabbed me by the ear right to the principal's office. And the principal said to the teacher, you're excused. And he said to me, he put his arm around me. He said, why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does. I said, everybody wants to believe the earth was flat. That doesn't make it flat. So he said, well, what do you think of American history? A strictly BS, bad science. So he said, what do you mean? Everybody in the history books does the right thing. They always have the right thing to say, they look right, they behave correctly, all through the years, never make any mistakes, never apologize for anything. I said, there's no such people as I read about in history books. Besides, all history is written. If the Germans won the war, they've shown pictures of chain gangs in America, you know, all the things that you don't know about, all the corruption you don't know about. And if we win, if the Japanese won the war, you have another movie, another history book that's different. So people say to me, what do you really like? I say, you ask 20 different people, you get 20 different images. I can't write an autobiography on myself because I would be biased in terms of my own background. Anyway, he didn't disagree with me. When my mother came in weeping, and she said, what did you do? He didn't do anything, the principal said. We have no place for him in our school. She said, oh my God, you mean he's going to be kicked out of school? The principal said, no, I'm going to take him to a bookstore and buy the books he wants to read. He doesn't like crap he's been given when he was a kid, like Dickie Dare and the sheep, I don't know if any had. On the way, met a cow, moo said the cow. Kids, Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella, touches a rat, becomes a white horse. You fill their head with crap first, and you say, now sing, we are free. Anyway, they're all controlled. And anyway, it's bad control, it's terrible. So what happened, the principal did, he took me to Macy's and bought me books I wanted. And the books I wanted was Mind in the Making by James Harvey Robinson, old book. And it's how we get to be the way we are. I didn't want the school books, they didn't tell me anything. It just told me about history, which was a batch of lies. And all the reasons for us going to war, a batch of lies, propaganda. And the language we learned was an old language, which you couldn't talk much about things. And there was a language I read as a kid called Language and Thought and Action by Hayakawa. How many have ever heard of it? Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski. Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. They're all on our website. You can get those books. I think you can.
I'm going through your book list and reading them. I'm just on why people believe weird things.
Are you getting anything out of it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Michael Sherman's Why People Believe Weird Things. That's what I'm reading right now.
Good.
Good.
Now, most of those books are not available. There's a society in America called the Heritage Foundation. And they believe they're good citizens, and they go through the library and take out books, have books removed by government pressure, or local pressure that they feel might be disturbing. You don't like that?
No, it's just,
It's terrible. I think.
That's definitely.
Now, the book called 100 Million Guinea Pigs Exposed the Drug Industry. And the public, it was a bestseller in America years ago. And the public demanded that we build an organization in Washington called the Pure Food and Drug Administration. They will investigate all drugs to make sure they're okay. Now it's peopled by the people of the drug industry. Do you understand that? That always happens. Okay? Now the Air Force or the Pentagon in Washington, they say they're there to prevent our country from being attacked. They're there to defend our country. Well, we gave them radar and everything in Hawaii. And the soldiers detected the enemy planes coming over. The GIs with their radar. They took it to a captain and said, we detect a flight of planes coming toward Hawaii. The captain says, probably our planes. Just during the hostile times. And then they overlooked that. So the radar served no purpose. Then they thought of building a defense system in Canada, the Dune Line they called it, where the Russian planes, if they came over, we'd have stuff over there. Well, if you had stuff over there, I can assure you the Russians wouldn't come over that way. You know, military thinking is based upon your kind of training you get. So the Arabs didn't have access to weapons, so they hijacked a plane. And they flew into the Trade Center. Does anybody ever know why North Korea and China are building armies and nuclear weapons? Does anybody know why? If you don't mind, there's a headline, Roger, will you get it for me? That you've never seen, but most Americans haven't seen it. We ran this in England, this headline. Thank you, Roxy. If you can't see it, I'll pass it around. It says, would you mind somebody read that aloud?
The U.S. plans for first strike nuclear attacks against 7 countries.
And it names them. North Korea, China, it names them. What do you expect them to do?
Defend themselves.
How many of you knew this? Will you show me your hand? How many of you knew this headline? You knew it? Where did you find out?
I live in Australia. We have things like that in Australia as
He
well.
said he lives
Australia,
in
oh.
Australia. Jack's hard of hearing.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so this is why they're doing it. Now, how can we build so much hatred in the people that they fly planes into a village? We've never heard their side of the story. I'm not pro their side of the story. I'm against all separate nations. But they all lie, all of them. And they all, the Pentagon released that. Even if you intended to bomb them, don't release that. It's another dumb thing they did. So everything that happens, there's a book called The Secrets of Pearl Harbor. The foreword is written by Admiral Halsey, well known, liked by everyone. How we got the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor. That's what that book's about. I can't even find it. You might find it on the internet. The internet is the last straw. It's the greatest liberator of human beings ever invented. But they love to control it. If you ever gain control of the internet, you can kiss your ass goodbye. So I want to say that children are so warped by this culture. And I want to give you another example of that, but I want to get back to the principal. He got me these books, and he wrote off the back of the class, and I was able to read that. But I was beaten up by the other students, not all of them, some of them, because they resented that privilege. But that went on for a year and a half, and he died. And they cut out that privilege. So I played hooky for 6 weeks. But when I came home one day, I looked like I was going to school. I came running around with the books, but I never went to school. And the tour officer was sitting on my doorstep. He's the guy that makes sure kids go to school. So I said, Jock, you haven't been to school for a month. I said, 6 weeks. He said, that's right. He said, what do you do when you're not in school? I said, I go to the science museum, I go to the library and read what I want to read. He said, what do you do at home? I said, I have a little lab. He says, can I see it? I said, under condition you don't tell my mother who you are. He agreed. He saw the lab and what I was doing he found interesting. He said, I can't tell you what to do as long as you're not hanging out in gangs and doing awful things in his face. He says, I can't tell you what to do, but you can do me a favor. I would appreciate it if you show up Monday, then you can play hooky from then on, as long as I've done my job. So of course I showed up Monday. From then on, I never went back to school. Because airplanes dropped pamphlets just during the Depression. In my lab, I showed up, played hooky because airplanes dropped pamphlets and said, come to California, there's lots of jobs. That's why I went to California. I hitchhiked. But before that, every 15 million people were sleeping in every empty lot because the banks failed. They failed and people bought homes and cars, but they couldn't pay them off. So the banks said, you're 3 weeks and you're out if you don't pay. So they were kicked out and they built shacks all over America. 15 million people in my area alone were kicked out of their houses. And there were bread lines and soup kitchens and all that. And I looked around, the stores had everything in the windows. Vacuum cleaners, radios. It's just that the public didn't have purchase power. They had it, but the banks failed, so they couldn't get it. And then I hitchhiked to Washington. Because the people were sleeping all over it. But in Washington, there was a larger group of people. They were war veterans of World War I. Thousands of them came with crutches, wheelchairs, and were sleeping all around the Capitol, every empty lot. And they said, we want our pension. The government promised them $600 when they got out of the Army so they can start life anew. But the government didn't have any money, so the government gave them an IOU. He said, I can't pay my rent or buy food with it. So they were all over the Capitol, and it looked very bad. So they got the Army to get them out of there. So the Army called and said, you guys have to leave. They said, no, we're not leaving till we get our $600 that the government promised us. So that was Douglas MacArthur. He was a captain. He threw tear gas at them and got them out of there. I just want you to know this. It's not in your history books. It should be, because there were thousands of soldiers involved. Do you understand? They don't care about people. Obviously, the government doesn't really care. Otherwise, they wouldn't outsource. Industry, American industry, would not outsource to China because it's just cheap labor. They would keep Americans working. But if they kept Americans working, we would lose the competitive edge. You understand? You wouldn't be able to exist. Either way. So, I'm trying to tell you they don't care about people. That's why they outsource. So, if they don't care about people, what are you fighting for? Okay. Now, we don't go to another country to bring democracy. It's because they have oil or they have something we need. Do you understand that? We don't go to bring democracy because we never had a democracy. I want to tell you what a democracy would be like. If you disagree, let me know. Our president would get up and criticize any country for an hour and a half or as long as he wants to. When he's finished, I says, is there anything else you want to add to that? He says, no, that's my criticism of China. Then I invite the Prime Minister of China to come on the air for an hour and a half and give his point of view. Then I invite the Prime Minister of Sweden. He says, they're both full of shit. This is how I see it. That's a democracy. But when you got religion on Saturday and Sunday only, no, not different religions, Christian religion mostly. You have to have a comparative religion, what all people believe and what some people don't believe. Agnostics, atheists, everybody. That's a democracy. Do you understand that? You've never had a democracy. If mothers don't know how to feed their kids nutritional food, if you're brought up in a house that was painted with Dutch boy white lead, that damages the brain. So when you bring your kid to school, he's not equal to other kids. In our school books it says, all people are born equal. They're not. Some are tall, some are thin, some are wide, some have better eyesight, some have better hearing. They're not born equal. They're different. I'm not advocating this. I'm telling you like it is. So what we would do in the future is examine children in many different areas. If you live in a house where mother and dad fight all the time, finally to get a divorce, you might go, boy, I'm never getting married. From your background, that appears to be correct. Do you understand me? So if a kid comes from such an insecure background, and if his mother, say, yaks at him all the time, you leave all your things around, your brother puts things back. What's the matter with you? Can't you clean up? I'm picking up after you all the time. That kid stops listening to verbal behavior. Then you bring the kid to school at 6, the teacher starts talking, he looks out the window. He's not interested in verbal behavior because it was unpleasant. Tyranny of words will help you do some of that. So, kids don't go to school as equal. They're not fed right. Like if a kid from an impoverished family says, hey, Daddy, we'll keep the moon up there. He says, what do I know about that? He says, I don't see no rope holding the moon up there. The dad can't further that. You might say, let's look it up in the encyclopedia. So you give your kid a head start. So when you bring kids to school, they come from different environments where love isn't a manifest thing. Not all children are loved and treated well by their parents. Now, I want to get on that bullshit word again, love. Another bullshit word, which everybody is looking for. Nobody ever really finds it. Now, I want to tell you something about love. How many of you like everything you've ever done in your life? Okay. So if you live with a replica of yourself, how long will you be together? Think about that. Okay? And anybody don't understand what I'm getting at? No,
Actually, yeah, you did understand that. You said if you live with a replica of yourself, how long would you?
if you live with a replica of yourself, how long will you be together?
Because you don't like everything that you yourself do in life.
I would have dumped myself a while ago.
What I'm saying
we're all a
that
little
sometimes you like yourself, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. Sometimes you fall in love and get married. And sometimes you like George a lot, sometimes a little less, sometimes you hate his guts. On Wednesday he's okay. So it's a fluctuating thing. Can you understand that? Nobody is constantly in love with themselves or anyone else. It fluctuates. Sometimes you love a person a little more, a little less. Does that make sense? Anybody got a problem with that? Nobody loves everybody or themselves all the time, unless they're mentally ill. So, if you do away with those things and educate people, like a girl sometimes comes crying to me, she says, my boyfriend left me. And I say to her, did you ever say no to a guy that you don't want to go out with him? She said, well, I guess so. How many times? Oh, I can't remember. So when you reject somebody, you can't think about their feelings, but you just have to understand how they relate to you. And if they don't, you reject them. So it's normal to be rejected or reject people. So if you reject people, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the person you reject. They don't meet your standards. They're different than you are. This guy's a socialist and you're a free enterpriser, you don't like him because he's a socialist. Or whatever it is. But people feel bad when they're rejected. Goddamn females, reject me. They get mad. There's something missing in our education, understanding human behavior. Now, the psychologists in the future would be arrested as criminals because they try to adjust you to the system. How many of you are majoring in psychology here?
I have a bachelor's in psychology, child development.
Anyone that would try to adjust you to this system has got to be a pinhead. So psychology or psychiatrists don't study human behavior. They really don't. They go to school, they get their PhD, they come out and they practice psychology. Psychology, for example, they'll say that some people are cold, they just have little feelings or care for other people, they're mentally ill. No, they're not. A lot of them are perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. So I said years ago, Jacques, how can you design a society that works with so many different values, different cultures, different interpretations of love? How can you bring the world together? So I said to myself, that's what thinking is, talking to yourself, nothing mysterious. If I say, I'll see you Saturday at 4 o'clock, he says, just a minute. Saturday, I take the kids to Aunt Minnie's, I can't make it. That's what thinking is, talking to yourself, nothing mysterious. So I said to myself, how the hell are you going to change all these people? Why don't you test it, see if it works? So I joined the Ku Klux Klan in Miami. I attended a lot of their meetings. And then after attending a lot of the meetings, I dissolved it in a month and a half. That group, that particular group, to see if it can be done. Then the next thing I did is I joined the White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners, any foreigners. And I dissolved it in 1 month alone. I'll tell you how it went, okay? So I then asked some people in New York what they consider the most difficult and backward people in the New York area, Brooklyn, New York, Queens. And they said, there's an Arab community in Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. I'm not attacking the Arabs, but this community group still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, Jock, you gotta try that. You gotta try to change it. If you can't, you can forget your project. So I called up a guy. I found out who was in charge. I always worked with a guy in charge. His name was Elbaz. And I said, Mr. Elbaz, I'd like to talk to you. First thing he said, are you Arab? That's his dialect. I know all these different dialects well. So I said, that means yes in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many different languages. So he said, from where your father he born? Where was your father born? I said, in Lebanon. He said, very good, come and saw me, come and see me. So I came to see him. He said to me, you believe the world is round? He held his hand up like that. I said, yes. That means it can't be in the Arab world. He felt sorry for me. Then he pointed to his head, which means he's smarter than I am. That's his body language. He held up his hand and said, if the world is round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down from the world over here. You understand? The water here, don't fall me down. But here, all the water, all the people, everything, he fall me down. I was using the best reasoning he had. Obviously, it wasn't. If you use words like gravitational effect, it doesn't get to him at all. So I said, I got to get to Elbaz, otherwise I'd be in a difficult problem. So I brought stuff with me. I anticipated his value system, since I spent a lot of time thinking about different types of people. So I gave him a balloon, and I rubbed it with fur very fast. And I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold his hand away from the balloon, underneath it. Does anybody know what happened with the cornflakes? They all attracted to the balloon by static electricity. His jaw hit the pavement. And he said, world he magnet? I said, yes. He went and explained that to all the other Arabs. I didn't have to argue with him. You demonstrate what they don't understand. I took about 5 or 6 of them to an airport. They've never seen an airplane. I just wanted to see how they would react. So Elbaz, being the leader, they all turned to him and they said, Elbaz, why they put the fan in front of the aeroplane as a propeller? He said, they fly up near to the sun, they get hot, so they put the fan in front of it. And that was pretty good for a guy with no knowledge about that. But I was curious, how can you know anything unless you're given something? So I began to question, can man really think or invent? What is thinking? Well, it appears to be talking to yourself. What is invention? If a man can't think, can he invent things? So at that time, I was invited to Princeton to speak to the sociology department on my thoughts and experience. I called also the American Psychological Association. I'd like to talk to you about new ways of getting to people. They said, are you a psychologist? No, are you a student? No, no thanks. They slammed the door. Okay? I just want you to know what happened. I did try to get things out there, but having no credentials makes it difficult. And I did a lot of different things in New York. I should tell you something about them. There's a place called Hell's Kitchen in that area. Crime was very high in that area amongst juveniles. So I went to a juvenile center, juvenile hall, what they call a correctional institute. I said, I'd like to watch the way you treat kids, what you do with juvenile delinquents. So the guy said, are you a student of psychology? I said, no. He said, I'm sorry. So I said, it's very important for me to see that. He said, yeah, but you have no qualifications. You're not studying psychology. Your dad isn't a psychiatrist. I said, look, the Wright brothers were nothing. They were bicycle mechanics. And the experts used to write books on why men can't fly. You talk about the establishment. And the Wright brothers never read that book, apparently, so they built a flying machine. And Louis Pasteur was not a doctor, he was a chemist. If people died taking his first, he'd have been executed. But they happened to live. Louis Pasteur was a chemist. And if you go down the line, Alexander Graham Bell was not an electrical engineer. He used to teach the deaf how to speak in front of a flame. Soup! The flame would move. You know, he'd use good method, and he made different devices. Out of that came the telephone. But it was not discovered. He didn't sit down and invent it. I'll tell you later how he did it. But man cannot think of anything new. So when I spoke at the Department of Sociology, I didn't want to speak to the sociology group. I wanted to address everyone in the university. So my title was, Man Can't Think or Reason. That made everyone angry in all the departments. They didn't come to the sociology department, they came to the auditorium where they held a meeting. So before I even said one word, a guy from the optics department got up and said, that I disagree with you, I take issue with you, I believe man can think and reason. I said, give me one example of man thinking and reasoning. He said, well, it's easy. I said, do it. What is it? He said, well, the camera. There's no camera out there. Somebody had to invent the camera. There's nothing in nature that's going to suggest it. So I said, you're wrong. If you go into a barn any barn anywhere with a knot hole in it, where daylight comes in, you'll see cows walking upside down on the wall of the barn. And if anybody doesn't know what I mean, raise your hand.
A pinhole camera.
Yes, that's a pinhole camera. But in the Holy Land, over 1,000 years ago, they made huts, domes out of mud and straw. And there happened to be a hole in one, just a hole accidentally made. And you can see people walking upside down, inside that, and you pay 2 pieces of silver to see the upside down world. No, the guys weren't phonies, they just didn't know what made it occur. That's where the camera came from. So the guy got mad at me. He said, damn it, he said, what about the movie camera? He one upmanship, you know. He tried to shut that aside. So I said, in China, over nearly, running more than 2,000 years ago, they used to cut out a silhouette of a girl with her hands in this position. Well, I'll draw what I saw in the Chinese museum. It was very bad, but it didn't look like a person very much. It was called a Dancy Girl. It was just a silhouette painted black. And the Chinese made paper out of bamboo, they call bamboo paper. And if you oil it, it's semi-transparent. Now if you put this little girl in front of the bamboo screen about 2-3 inches and light a candle in front of the girl, as the candle flickered, the girl danced. Does anybody understand it? If you light a candle behind this pencil, as it flickers, the shadow will move up and back on the screen. If you put 3 candles, there'd be 3 dancing girls. Do you understand that? Now, the Chinese made that, but they also made pamphlets. Let me see if I can. They took bamboo paper and they lined up one sheet behind the other, so they had about 10 pages. I'm just trying to show you what they did, roughly. Then they bind it together. I'm not sure what they used. Then they'd write the Chinese characters up and down. This is ancient China. Then they made a mark in the corner to identify the page that had the information they want. Accidentally, if you happen to flip it fast, the mark in the corner jumps all over the place. Is there anybody not familiar with that? If you made marks in a pad and flipped it, they would jump around. It took about 30 years after that experience for a Chinaman to draw a bird with different successive pictures of the wings in flight. And he drew them in the corner of the book and went, and the bird looked like it was flying. So everybody doesn't understand me? I don't mind repeating it. He then took the wave of the sea and a man walking in different degrees. He drew a man walk, it wasn't very good. And you'd see a guy walking. Another Chinese carpenter took a dowel. He didn't like the flipping of the pages, and he cut slots in the dowel. He had done this for other purposes in the past. He made these dowels with slots in them, and he put all the pictures in the slots, so it looked like a paddle wheel. If you don't understand my drawing, it's a quick drawing of what the pictures were like in the slots. Got it? It looked like a paddle wheel. And if you turn the crank on top of it, you'd see a bird flying or whatever. But it wasn't very good. That is, it looked like a bird was flying. Sometimes it didn't. But if you put your finger there and interrupted it and let the picture pause for just a few seconds so the eye can pick it up, then it worked. So he then put a piece of bamboo there that interrupted the pictures. And that's in the Chinese museum. And if you turn the crank, you see a man walking, waves moving, or a guy pulling a push carriage, with a person in it, the things of China. And the Frenchman saw that in the Chinese museum and machined it out of brass. Beautiful job. You turn the crank and he put more pictures in, photographs. And that was great. Edison saw that and bought it from the Frenchman. And Edison made a gadget that looked like a pencil sharpener, big pencil sharpener. And it had a view thing built into the pencil that looked like a big pencil sharpener. Tried drawing it, looked like, and it was called a Nickelodeon. You put a nickel in, turned the crank, and those pictures went by the paddle wheel. It looked like this with a viewer up here. You put a nickel in a slot. I don't know if any of you lived to see that. In the old days, they were around all over the place. Did anybody ever see these things?
Well, these
two.
have interesting reproductions.
Yes, reproduction of it, all right. So no one sat down and invented a movie camera. It's so developed serially, so slowly, bit by bit, that you think, my God, what a wonderful mind. But we're in touch with universal knowledge which comes to the mind. That's where all this bullshit about telepathy and all that stuff. And some scientists call new frontiers of the mind are trying to investigate telepathy. So I was at a psychological meeting once where they said, we're going to check out telepathy, see if it's real. I said, how do you know how to check it out? You'd have to read every gimmick used to manifest that. They said, well, you be in charge of that. I said, no. I said, well, I went there. I just want to tell them that they're not capable of checking it out. Like man, if he can't understand where all this comes from, he invents God. Somebody had to make it. It's like my kid saying, Daddy, what makes an airplane fly? Is it the propeller? I said, if the engine doesn't turn the propeller, it won't move. Is it the engine? No, if you don't put fuel in that engine, it won't operate. Then is it the fuel? No, without oxygen, that fuel won't combust. Or a spark plug. So he said, what makes it fly? It's many interacting systems. Just like doctors years ago used to go looking for the cause of cancer. Like there's a cause. There's many interacting variables. So medicine does not equip to study cancer. You need doctors, biologists, physicists, and electrical engineers. The body is an electrical, chemical machine that operates according to certain laws. And the answer does not lie within medicine. So you don't even have doctors that know how to think about the subject. I try to talk to different groups. Having no credentials, I have a difficult. But now we're invited all over the world to speak at universities all over the world. I want you to know what's happening with the Venus Project. Magazines all over the world are doing articles. We got an inquiry from a magazine called The Irish Entrepreneur. And they said, would you do an article on the Venus Project? I said, let's see the magazine. The magazine's a business magazine, all about money. I said, you wouldn't like it? It's criticizing the monetary system. They said, well, we'll run it anyway. I said, you promised not to change a word. They said they did, and they ran it, and they didn't change a word. It's redesigning the world, Irish Entrepreneur, about over a year ago. And they ran it straight. And we got letters from the Weekly Reader. Do you know that children's magazine? It goes
Yeah.
the Weekly Reader. They said, would you do an article on the Venus Project for the level of children? You may get letters from 10 teachers. We got a letter from 1,000 children and teachers. They want to know what the Venus Project is more about. And they had kids making models of the Venus Project. Then the kids said, can we come and live out here in Venus? When you send us tickets, we want to come and live in that kind of system. It was amazing, the reaction we got. When we went to Turkey, they gave us an hour and a half, and they set up a Venus Project course. They printed our book in Turkish right away. Then they said, we'd like to build a Venus Project. That's before the collapse, the economic. They wanted to send the students from the universities out here to learn how to think about things. It never came off because the depression hit, and things are very bad out there. But there are people out there trying to work out the problems. So I'm just telling you what's happening. All those magazines are from France, Germany, all over the world. Turkey on the Venus Project. Pictures of our project, what we want to do. No attitude against it. When we got to Turkey, CNN, all the broadcasting, I mean, spent long days with us shooting this discussion that I'm having with you. Without this discussion, without film, it's not possible. So, I mean, really, you can't get to most people without it. So everybody didn't understand this, that no one invented anything anyway. what happened is somebody in the audience at Princeton said, how about Tesla? He had a fine mind and he made
How about what? Can you repeat?
Tesla.
wireless
Tesla.
communication.
Nikola Tesla.
Wireless communication without wires. Where did that come from? So I said to him, when I was a kid, don't forget I'm 93, when I was a kid there were stores called electrical stores, and you bought electrical wiring and stuff, those stores. But sometimes they rolled the wire on a cardboard cylinder. That's how they sold the wire. They rolled it on the cylinder, and they got the cylinders from the carpet company. Carpets come on a cardboard cylinder. And they rolled it on a cylinder because they don't want to push the wire in a bag, see. So they rolled it on a cylinder. Sometimes the wire was broken. So people connected two electrodes, two chip clamps to it, and a small battery and a galvanometer to see if the wire was broken. And if you happen to buy fine wire, they wrap it around a smaller unit. And the guy who packaged it shoved the small unit in the big unit. And when you tested the outside, it induced a current on the inside one, even though it wasn't connected. That's where Tesla got it from. He didn't sit down and say, gotta make a wireless. And then they tell you in school, they tell you that somebody invented the wheel. And that was the beginning of the technical age. That's another bullshit thing. I'm dealing with probability now. Probably a tree fell over another tree and a guy pulled it and it rolled. That's probably where it was suggested from. If everybody doesn't understand what I'm saying, if a tree falls over another tree and you pull it, it rolls. But if there's a stone in the way, it'll stop the thing from rolling. So they shaved off the bark in the mid-region. And if you keep shaving off bark, you get two wheels on the end. That's what it happens. So, what is creativity? Creativity is taking known elements and putting them together in unique ways.
And isn't that what thinking is, though?
Yes.
And isn't that absolutely
Nothing
crucial
magic.
for our future?
Yes.
So these physical inventions come from observations, but scientific theory is creativity, it is new inventions,
Yes.
it is essential
Yes.
for this
Yes.
world going
That's
forward.
why our language is so old, it has to be updated and more scientific terminology. That's why semantics, the book, have you ever read much of it? Semantics is very useful to read books like Tyranny of Words, Mind in the Making, all of it.
Linguistics, all of that. That's
Yeah.
the idea.
Which includes all of that. So, putting it another way, let's say we go back to the days of the caveman. The caveman sitting in a cave, here's a cave, and this is a man sitting in a cave, or a woman. You see that drawing? A man sitting in a cave. In order to climb a hill, if you step on a severe incline, you'll slip. If you step on a flat, slightly flat, you'll get up. So when you climb a hill, you look for slight flats. Is anybody clear? After this guy lives there 10 years, it gets to look like that. He doesn't say, I gotta make steps to get up to the cave. Can't. It occurs as he walks up the hill. Time and time again, he steps on the flat areas and it changes. Then when he moves from this cave, he brings that knowledge with him, called associative memory. So if you're walking down the street at night and 3 black men are coming and they beat you up, the next time she sees 3 black, she crosses the street. That's associative memory. Or if they're Filipinos, or Greeks, or Italians, right? So
All men.
you got all these different kinds of people that look different. When I was a kid, there weren't too many Chinese around, except in the laundry. So we used to run down and look at them, you know. And the black guy was rare in my neighborhood, because they lived in quarters. And we used to run down the street and look at them, because they looked so different. We didn't know anything about them. People said, well, they don't want to play with those black kids, or the green kids, or whatever you had. So you had the parents fucking up the kids real bad. You're a Lutheran, you don't play with that little Catholic girl. So parents do a lot of damage, not because they're bad. Nobody is good or bad. Everybody is perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. Brother, if you don't get there and take it first, be nothing left for you. Kids are brought up with different, and psychologists think they're self-centered. They invent words, psychopathic. They invent all kinds of phony words, not considering the environment. The environment makes bigots, prejudice, Turks. The difference between a Turk, the difference between a creative, productive person and a lazy person is environment. So you work on the environment, get rid of the environment that makes that. Have you ever heard of Jeffrey Dahmer? How many people have? How many people have heard of Albert Fish? That goes way back. They believe he ate 45 children. The public wanted to tear him to pieces. There's a psychiatrist named Wortham, rare individual, said, don't kill him. I want to try to find out what made him that way. Well, he wasn't very good at that. He didn't find out everything. But this is what he did find out. When the kid was about 8 years old, he was touching his private parts. His mother was an old-time Baptist. Came in, he had no attitude about it. My mother looked at him and said, you're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body. That's evil, sexual, satanic. And kept on the kid, you burn eternally of touching that part of your body. You want to go to hell and burn there? Well, the kid was shaking like mad. Mother said at 2 a.m. he was screaming. So she went into his bedroom, he stuck needles in his genitals, didn't want to go to hell. But he used to take minority kids into the woods and try to cut their genitals off. He was brought up in a distorted environment. And there's nothing wrong with him mentally. They think he belongs to psychiatric ward. No, there's a lot of people that are fucked up by the values of their culture. Only when the brain disorder is physical, high temperature, I'm talking about last stages of syphilis, there are many brain disorders, physical damage, that's different. But the difference, it's hard to tell the difference when you talk to a member of the clan between brain disorders and value system distortion. Do you know what I mean?
How do you explain the difference between a child who takes that from his mother and sticks needles in his genitals that night, and another child who takes that from his mother and is like, I'm just going to chill like this and do everything she says from
I
now
got
on?
the same thing from 2 priests used to come to my seminars, and they said, I know 2 people from the identical environment. One turned out a priest, another a gangster. If environment's everything, how do you get those differences? The minute you pick up the younger kid and start playing with it, and the 7-year-olds say that with that lip out, why are you playing with this kid? You're making jealousy and envy. Then I notice when the little kid falls down the steps, the old kid has white ribs. Is he bad? No. You made him that way by not knowing enough about children. You take the young kid, put him on, take the older kid, put him on, this is your baby brother. You never play with one kid or say, why can't you be like your brother? Or why can't you be like your sister? That's where the parents fuck up the kids. They have to go to school to learn how to raise children in the future. I want to tell you a little bit about children. I wanted to communicate with my boy when he was about 3 months old. Well, that's before communication. But I want to communicate with any system whatsoever that produces desired behavior. It's not language first. Communication. Communication is any system. A person can say to you, it was nice having you come again. They don't want to see you. You're reading something else. It's any method. If you slap a kid and he stops doing something, he communicates with his fist. Another guy, he speaks to you. If you don't understand, he gets louder. If you still don't get it, he makes a fist. Punch it. I said America is the greatest country on earth. You disagree with it, he'll punch you. That's a reaction to those words. No one acts automatically. No one has free will. Oh, that's another bullshit word. That we can make choices. We can't. Depends on where we're brought up. If you ask an Eskimo, you can have anything in the world, what do you want? He doesn't say a stainless steel refrigerator. He doesn't have his vocabulary.
Yeah.
An Eskimo never dreams of walking on a palm fringed beach unless he's seen a movie, you understand, or books or pictures. So we can escape our culture. No one is open-minded. You can't be open-minded. You can be more flexible than others, but you can't be open-minded because you have a language and a way of thinking superimposed upon you by your culture. So when I was a kid, I probably made more mistakes than anyone I know because I tried more things. So no one, I want to say this clearly if I can, no one ever makes a mistake in their life. They do with what they know. No, the first guy that fooled with nitric acid and glycerin, he disappeared in the building. His brother-in-law wrote, never play with There was a guy in France that built a set of wings that extended 3 feet on each side, and he knew he could fly with those. So he jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. So anyway, wanting to know more about humans and how they think and reason, I'm using old language. I'd call a 6-year-old boy or girl and say, draw a picture of a human being. At 6, this is generally what I got. Not exactly like this, but something like this. I'm sure you've seen that. Then I would ask them is there anything you can add to that picture? And they would add something like this. And I'd say, and I'd ask, is there anything else you can add? And they'd draw a circle with lines coming out of it. And that would be as far as I'd go with them to check the uniformity of response. It's very uniform, because I've seen it. Sure, most of you have seen that. It's not telepathy. Then the teacher would give them a crayon and they'd color it. And the teacher would hang it up, and I would try to stop the teacher from hanging it up. She said, well, the children, they made these drawings and just want to hang them up, show what they're doing. I said, why don't you hang up K-A-T? They spells cat with a K. Well, then we'd lose communication. So I said, this is not right. If you hang that up, you freeze the kid at that level. So I called the kid over, and I say, how does this guy get in that door? I asked the kid, and the kid says right away, I made him too big. I said, does the guy eat anything? Looks like he never ate anything in his life. So right away, the kid would add mass, not very good. You know, kind of like that. He'd add mass to the drawing. And I say to the kid, these are the way most children draw. I said, how would you like to be able to draw like an adult right away? Good drawings. He says, I'm only 6 years old. I said, don't worry about that. Because artists don't know how to communicate. I guess I've been drawing for years. It's kind of a gift or talent. All those words, gifted, talent, they're all bullshit words. Like instinct is a bullshit word. How does it work? Where does it come from? The artist doesn't know precisely how to tell people how to draw. So I say to the kid, do you know a little bit about the alphabet? They say yes. Do you know what the letter T looks like? Yes. If they know that, I have them draw they'll take these home with me. I have them draw a big T, like that. And I make sure that the top of the T doesn't lean this way or that way. I tell them, I don't use terms like right angles. I say these are distorted T's. And they usually pick this one. Once they draw the T, I say, do you know what an almond is? The kid says, those kids that do, folks that do. I say, I draw 3 things. Which looks like an almond? This, or this. They usually pick this. And I say, you draw 1 almond here, very light, and an almond on the side of that, and 1 touching it here. Then erase the middle almond. 1 almond above, you draw a half round. I'll work upside down. What's this? That's a letter V. What's this? It's a V upside down. Well, whatever this distance is, from here to here, you draw a V upside down. What's this? The kid says that looks like a lot of birds he's flying. You draw a flying birdie one peach bit down, with the wings no greater than the center of the peach bit. Connect another bird to that and a half round beneath that. And what's this? She says that's a heart. You draw half a heart from the top of the eyebrow to the bottom of the nose. Anyway, the kid moves from that crap over to this. In other words, you use a different way. You use whatever language you have to use. And I can teach anyone to draw in less than 20 minutes the basics of drawing. It's not an inborn gift. The artist has something in mind when he sits down. He doesn't know what it is. It's like asking a normal person, when did you learn to speak? He says, Saturday morning, February. No, first he went da 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 da. And then maybe somebody banged his knee and went, huh? Banged his elbow, and he ate something. And language is an extrapolation of noises made over a long period of time. Nobody sat down and says, I got to invent a way to communicate. That may work today, but nobody invents anything. I also asked Osceola's great-grandson where the bow and arrow came from. He said his grandfather's grandfather told him that the Indians used to cut a bear skin. It was a bad drawing of a bear skin. And they put it out in the sun to dry after they skinned the bear. And when they came back, it was half the size, and that bothered them. So they built a frame around the bear skin, and they tied leather strips to it to keep it from shrinking too much. So anybody can't see that? Okay. Well, when you cut the leather strips, they used natural glass called obsidian, and they cut the strips. But when you cut a strip of leather, that too shrinks. It becomes about half the size and 3 times as fat. And that bothered them, bothered the Indians. So the Indians tied that strip of leather to a piece of wood, any piece of wood they could grab. And if it was thick enough, it didn't shrink as much. But if it was too thin, they had the bow. I don't know if you understand that. The bow is the result of shrinking leather and the branch thin enough not to support that. So the branch is pulled by the shrinking leather. And the first Indian picked it went bang, and made a smaller one, bing, a heart. So nobody ever sat down and invented the bow and arrow. The schools are scattered, ass backward. They show you great inventors, Edison invented the electric light. They don't tell you all the people who went before that. They tell you Leonardo da Vinci was ahead of his time. But they don't tell you the people he associated with talked of gears and levers, and they never show you that. So it puts a mystery. It puts a mystery around invention. They think certain people are naturally gifted. Some are lazy, some are productive. All that's bullshit. It isn't so. I'm looking for my glass of water.
It's here, we moved it.
Blue one.
Thank you.
It's the only blue one.
Am I going too fast for you? I'm going to show you how I changed the Klan. I'll tell you what I did. Okay? You don't confront them on any of their beliefs. You side with them first. But you get to the guy in charge. There's always a guy in charge of every group. You try to work on him. So I fired a gun and split a cigarette near my little girl's mouth. She doesn't even remember this. What I did is I cut the cigarette with a razor blade, put a hairpin in it, and thought I had a roll it. And the hairpin blew tobacco all over me after I fired the gun. I wouldn't do it even with my own daughter. But I didn't tell that to Lou Merman. He was very impressed. He said, will you come on down to the Klan, that's the way he spoke, and speak to our boys about what you're doing? I think you're a smart guy, and they ought to know about it. I said, Lou, I can't talk to them, they wouldn't understand. He said, don't worry, I'll get them to listen to you. I'll tell them to listen, this man, he knows what we're talking about. That's the way he spoke. So I used to make wire recordings. We didn't have tape recorders in the old days. They were wire recorders. Anybody remember that? Just a wire going by a magnetic head, and we magnetized the wire. So I used to make recordings of their dialect, so I'd know when I made the motion picture in the future on how to change people, show how it was done. So anyway, he invited me to a Klan meeting, and I said, Lou, you do some marvelous things. Will you teach us how to do those things? He says, well, what you want to know? I said, well, you could just look at a person, tell us all about him, and you don't even know the person. I said, will you teach me how to do that? He says, I didn't think I can teach you nothing, John. You're a smart guy. I said, I don't know anything about that. How to change, how to look at people and tell what they're like. He said, well, I'll be glad to teach you. I said, next Klan meeting. So I brought my equipment down with him, and I projected a picture on the wall of a character. White, sandy mustache, gray hair, and he's telling me all about the guy. He's a good Christian man, I'd say. I'd say a patriot, maybe a war veteran, projecting like mad his own values into this character. And I said, after about 10 minutes of detail, family man, God-fearing man, I'd say, anything else you want to add to him? He said, no, that pretty much sums him up. So I pulled the bottom of the picture out and said, wanted by the FBI for subversive action against the United States. And the Klansmen were laughing at Lou for the first time, because he used to go on, and nothing checked out, you know. They laughed, and so I said to the guys walking, you guys shut your mouth. Lou knows more about people than we do. He's the head of the Klan. You protect him. You're on side with him. So he goofed up this time. Don't we all goof up sometime? And the next thing is a record of a guy speaking about aviation, heavy English, Oxford accent. So he says, I see a skinny Englishman without that, and a bald head, very white. And he's an educated guy, I say a college guy, well-educated, smart guy. Because what he was talking about was beyond and above what Lou knew or anyone else. And then the image comes on later, special record I made, and it's a black guy raised in England. Completely off. White, skinny white man with a bald head. So I said, Lou, he said, after the film, he said, goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. Goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. I said, that nigger, I have to use those words, was raised in England. And if he was raised in France, he talked like a Frenchman. He said, you mean to say that niggers talk like niggers because they brought up in a nigger environment? I said, precisely. That's the only way you can talk to him. I said, Lou, if I took your kid and brought him up by an impoverished black family, he goes, say, Dad right, you right, just like that, if that's normal to that environment. If you take a white kid, a Swedish kid, brought him up by a black family, he's going to speak just like a black man. And take a Swedish kid, bring him up in Ireland, did you know that Lincoln was Irish, man? You know, he would speak just like an Irishman. Do you understand that? So you stop condemning people for the way they speak, or the way they act, or the way they think. My job was to turn them around. So they said, you mean to say that children brought up with idea and not got any inborn instincts? I said, Lou, did you have to learn English? Didn't you have to learn how to fire a gun, how to empty the barrel, and the difference between a certain type of gun and another type of gun? He says, yeah. I said, Lou, is there anything you can say in French? I can't speak French. He said, because you never learned how. But to learn to speak, you got to be put in a French environment, or a school where French is spoken. If you want to be an aviator, you have to put in an aviation environment. They don't put you in an airplane. They put you in a dummy plane we can move the controls first and gain control of that. Then you don't even get into a real airplane. They show you how to check the tire, make sure there's no water in your fuel, lots of things before you fly. Then you get in an airplane, move the controls, and you learn that there's the aileron, elevator, rudder, all parts. They have to put you in a medical environment to make you a doctor. They're not pathologists or anything. They put you in that environment. Now, we don't see with our eyes. We see with our brain. See, people think you see with your eyes. People think you have eyes to see with. That's another bullshit word. So whenever I meet a person like that, I bring them into a dark room and say, see. I can't see nothing. I said, right, it takes light for you to see. Then they used to try to teach me that plants grow. They can't grow unless there's sunlight, gravity, moisture, soil, temperature, all those things. Plants of themselves can't grow. Nothing is self-operating. That's where God comes in. The whole thing is that nothing moves by itself. A sailboat moves by the wind. You speak by environment. You think from environment, so-called thinking. So everything is acted upon by other things. You're made up of stuff that was here eternally. The bugs you ate, plants you eat, the tissue you eat is converted to human tissue. If you eat that kind of beef, salami sandwiches and hot dogs with preservatives in it, you damage your living tissue. So we go ahead and do things because there's profit in it. I don't want to get into that too much. I want to get back to Lou Merlin and the Klan. So what I did is I gave them examples and assignments. They want to know how to. So they said, well, how do you train dogs? My dog listens to me sometimes, and sometimes he don't come over. And my kids will never listen to me. This is Lou Merlin speaking. So I showed him how to get his kids to listen to him. And after that, I set them up with experiments to teach a dog how to walk upright or lie down or roll over, all the basic things. And they said, boy, that works. My kid now listens to me and all that. So, since that worked, I brought the final film in, which I made about 65 years ago in a transit camp. A transit camp is a place where they used to call them wild boys of the road, would be hitchhiking all over America. Their families were displaced. And we were hitchhiking on freight trains, on highways, and Roosevelt administration built these camps, like CC camps, if you know what that is. The kids worked 3 hours a day on the farm, growing the food. We got 75 cents a week. That kept us out of trouble. So, at the transit camp, I needed money for experiments. So I went to the head of the camp. He was an unemployed psychologist, Dr. Holt. I said, I'd like to do some animal experiments. Is that okay with you? He said, what kind of experiments? So I said, well, I want to find out. I catch a lot of raccoons for the North Miami Zoo, and they're very hard to train. I'd like to see what I can do with them. So he said, what are you going to do? What kind of training? He asked me a lot of questions, and I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted all the raccoons to be able to sit at a table. When I bring food there, they all go up and sit at the table. I want them to follow me around under certain conditions. He said, well, I got a Bolex camera. Would you mind photographing what you do? I said, no, not at all. So he lent me his Bolex camera. And when he did that, I said, I want to do an experiment with a pig in particular. He said, I gave him a little discussion of what I want to do with a pig. He said, boy, that sounds fascinating. So he said to me, where do you get all your information about these things? He says, I never thought of that, things like that. So I said, from the best lab in the world, right out there. So he said, go. So this is what I did. I built a cage about the size of this table. It looked like a dome. I put a baby pig in it. If there's anything you don't understand, don't let me go on with this. I put a weighted paper basket in the middle of the table, countersunk. It was sunken down in the table. I put some crumpled paper near the wastebasket, just right near, and I knew the pig would hit it, because if you put a pig or any animal in a cage or a human, they walk up and back a lot. So I knew he'd hit that paper and knock it in the basket accidentally. On the bottom of the basket, I had a micro switch. That's a switch with a long extension. So when the paper hit a food dispenser, dispensed a little bit of food, not much, a little bit. But the pig did not get the connection until about 10 times. And associative memory doesn't form in animals very quick. So then the next thing I did is once he picked the paper and put it in the basket deliberately and waited under the dispenser, I began to move the dispenser further and further away until I got it in another area. Next thing I did, after he put the first piece of paper, I had a second piece of paper. And he put the first piece way around the dispenser and he saw the second piece. And I figured by that time, his associative memory would get him to put the second piece. It worked. He put the second piece in the basket. Then I pulled the basket up, because it takes me too long to condition the pig to pick it up and put it in the basket. If you pull the basket up, the basket said, put waste here, remain clean, you know. Then I put dirty rags instead of paper like it. And the pig came in and he wore a white jacket and a little sign said the Immaculate Pig. And the pig kept putting up dirty rags in the basket. He cleaned up the area and then left. He went under the food dispenser. The next thing I wanted the pig to do is to take, change the dirty bed sheet. I made a bed for the pig. It looked like this. If you don't understand this, you must interrupt me. 2 rollers with the bedding stretched across the rollers. Now, if you put a pig in a confined environment, and this is soft enough, he will eventually get up on it, sleep on it. When the pig slept on it, if you get up in the morning, I then connected a wheel to this roller. And if the pig is kept in a confined environment, if you take rats and put them in a confined environment, you put a wheel in there, you don't have to train them, they'll go in and run. Adrenaline. So the pig eventually got up on this wheel, and when he turned it, that changed the dirty bed sheet. It wasn't that the pig was changing the dirty bed sheet. You understand that? Okay. Then I had a door to the cage that was partly open and food out there. And the pig tried to get out there and he couldn't. But then when he got back on the wheel and turned it, the door would open. If he turned it beyond the bed change, the door would open so he can get to the food. So the pig did that. The next thing I did, I wanted the pig to take a shower. Now that's outside of the pig's choices. So I bent the rubber hose like the letter U. So you can picture this with a rubber hose bent like that with bamboo extension sticking down, and it was just a little lower than the pig's height. So when the pig left his little confined sleeping area, he touched these gadgets walking through there, and that scratched his back. Pigs seemed to like that, so he turned around and went up and back about 10 times, getting his back scratched. Once that was established, I later used wires here, and the wires tripped a jar that was up here with soap and water and turned on the shower. Do you understand that? First the back scratching, then the shower. Now I showed that film to the clan. I showed the pig getting out of bed, changing the dirty bed sheet. Narration. Then the pig would take a shower and wear that white jacket, the Immaculate Pig, and pick up all the dirty things, put in the wastebasket. And these clan, about 30 of them, are watching that film. It's a real pig. And they're watching their jaws are open. I'll raise me a lot of pigs, John. I ain't never seen no pig that smart. How come? I said, I raised in a different environment. They said, what's that? I explained all the detail. So they began conditioning animals. See, Pavlov wrote about conditioned reflex, saliva flow, but he didn't know enough about it. The Russian government never understood. Neither did Pavlov. B.F. Skinner tried to do a lot of work along those lines, and I called him on the phone and talked to him. I said, do you think people are reflexive, conditioned? And he said, well, it's too early to say. He didn't have enough information at the time. So I want you to know that that film was a major mechanism of change, not confronting them with anything. Then I thought of making a motion picture. to get to people. Is what the movie is about. If you know any film producers, contact them. It's a family, 50 years into the future, walking along that lake over there. This is supposed to be the future. And they're walking along that lake, and there's two little kids. One is 7, the boy, and the girl is 6. But they're brought up in a new world, where they understand geology, continental drift. Kids can learn anything. They don't need Dickie Dare and Sheik Little Bo Peep. They can learn anything, math, physics, astronomy. Kids are interested in everything. So these kids are very well informed. And they're walking along that lake, and the little girl, with the camera's at the height of the little girl, turns up toward Daddy, and he bends down toward the camera. And the little girl says, Daddy, we live in such a wonderful world, so many flowers all around. That's during certain season here. So we have a lot of flowers and things. And there's no prisons, no crime, no police. How do we get from that old world of jealousy, envy, hatred, war, poverty, hunger, lack of security? How do we get to this world? He said, didn't you get that in school? He said, only a little bit. The little boy says, I want to know in detail how you got from the old world to this one. It's a long story. Both the kids insist. So he sits them down and he starts talking, and it fades out, comes back to the present day. Here's what happens. It's during this time. It's in cameras in front of the UN, and this is fictitious from here on out. There's a guy that looks like Albert Einstein. He's liked a great deal. I tried to address the UN. I was turned down. So here I have a guy like Einstein addressing the UN on how to build a world without war and all these problems. He's only given 1 hour by the UN because they say anything more than an hour doesn't work. This is today, the UN. You can't turn people around in 10 minutes or an hour. So anyway, this doctor's explaining to all the nations what I'm talking to you about. And the Prime Minister of France stands up and he says, in a heavy French accent, angrily, never would France accept a machine government. Never. It has no feeling, it doesn't care. We want people in government. And the whole UN stands up. I believe that's what would happen if this were presented in 1 hour to the UN. This is in the film. They all reject it. So the guy, like Einstein, he's made a lot of contributions to the world, new surgical instruments, X-ray machines. He's done a lot of wonderful things, but there you've gone too far. They can't accept that. So he says to the Prime Minister of France, would you mind coming up to the podium? He says, I'll do anything you ask. It's just that we can't accept this. But what do you want me to do? He comes up to the podium. And this guy says, would you mind taking your jacket off and your shirt, expose your bare chest? He says, it's a very unusual request in a heavy French accent, but if you ask me, I'll do it. And he does it. She says, what's that scar you have here? He says, I have a pacemaker, a machine. How do you breathe when your heart gave out? There was a respiratory machine. There's a lot of mumbling in the UN, and a lot of listening and discussion. And it shows the first city going up, the new city. And the new city is like what I described to you, only I didn't finish it. But there is no ownership of anything. You live in a beautiful home. The interior is furnished according to your specs. Whatever you need. If you're an anthropologist, you can have films on anthropology without a price tag. You have films on behavioral sciences in your home. It's designed for you. Now, if your wife is an interior decorator, and you're, say, a physical scientist, and she says, don't put your feet up on the table, so we designed a double dome so she can have her type of environment, you can have your type connected together. Don't try to make her over like you, or she's going to make you over like her. Don't leave your tobacco pods around. Whatever women, whatever differences there are, if they're too severe, you may have a lot of areas working in common, but during the transition, there's going to be problems. So I'm talking to you about the transition. So what happens in this city is here's how it works. We only design 1/8 of the city in this instance, and we reproduce it. Instead of having each architect design each building all around, it's much more efficient to do it that way. The central building is distribution, food, everything you use. Radio, television, communication center, schools, dental care, optics, medicine, everything is in the center. And each district is the same distance from the center. Now, if you build suburbia, the things you're given, the bullshit you're given, you got millions of houses, and you have to drive that way to school, this way to the dentist, that way for shopping. Waste of energy, waste of design. Here, they sell refrigerators that you put outside your window, keep your house cool. We have cool air under the ground, circulate, and those that want it, turn it on. When you walk out of your room, all the lights go out. The whole electrical system shuts down unless you press no on that. All your books are laser printed, and they're printed from the outside by focusing laser beams. And if it's medical books, they're updated unless you press hold, that you don't want them updated. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so your house is very smart. You have no lamps like I have here. The ceiling glows evenly. And all you do is press a panel for the color blue or red, whatever you want the color to be of the interior. And instead of getting, she says, goddamn, turn the air conditioners down, too cold, you have zone cooling and zone heating. You know what I mean? It's warm in your zone, cool in your zone. And cool the way you want it. The furniture, when you sit in it, it accommodates. The reason you move in a chair is to improve circulation, because circulation cuts out. That's what bed sores are. So when I was in the Army Air Force, they drafted me, by the way. I only designed safety devices for airplanes, only. So they said when a pilot flies a great distance, he becomes fatigued. Sometimes he gets sores on his butt, like bed sores. So I designed a seat that inflated and deflated. It's just like you moving around. And I wanted that in hospital beds. So they deflate and inflate for people that are too sick to move around. Then I began to design surgical instruments, artificial legs, for medics. And I found out that certain people couldn't afford them. Even though he didn't have a leg, he couldn't afford that leg. So I said, what the hell am I wasting my time on this monetary society? So all this happened, most of this, during the Depression. Now, during the Depression, there were people up on soapboxes talking about mankind united, back to Jesus, family values, everything, socialism, communism. And every university student was talking about socialism, communism, technocracy. All these things are being discussed. All over the country, people were talking about new ideas. It took the Depression to make that happen. That's what's happening now. That's why people are looking into zeitgeist within them, see, because things aren't working. So, to make it clear, I would say that I want to get you from one point to another in this film. I don't want to forget that. The film is about the change and what will happen during the change, how our language will be updated. If you learn a foreign language, most languages foreign are older. And if they're older, they're thalamic, meaning based on emotions and feeling. Cortical language is, I want to explain the difference. In thalamic language, if you're driving an automobile with both of your kids in it, and it slips off the highway, and it turns over, and your kids are trapped in it, say, oh my God, the gasoline is coming, that's going over the engine, that's emotional. But if you pick up a heavy limber, break the window, take your kids out, that's cortical behavior. Converting emotions to a workable system. So say, oh my God, my house on fire, 2 kids are in the bedroom, what can I do? That's emotional. Emotional behavior will change in the future into cortical behavior. Do you think you understand what that means? Anybody that doesn't?
What is cortical behavior?
Cortical is doing the best thing to get the kids out of the building, or out of the car.
The rational
Okay?
thing.
Operate. Do something about it. Say, God, the winters are awfully cold. Well, what do you suggest? Like these politicians say, you can't have socialized medicine in America, and everything else be socialized. What do you suggest we do for people that don't have medical care? Ask them, what do you suggest? You'll never get an answer. So they have no answers. So what you have to do is point out what doesn't work in the system. If you show people houses where without curtains, because curtains harbor all kinds of fungi, and curtains harbor all kinds of odor. So do carpets. But in the future, your windows will go dark as you want them to. If you don't want bright light, you don't put curtains in front of it. It sets a lot of dust, of course, in the air. Not because Fresco doesn't like curtains. They're just not good. So what you want your windows to go dark. And so if you want your windows to go dark, you can either verbalize that you want your windows to go dark. You'll have a built-in telephone in your ceiling, and you can speak to people in France, and no one, you don't have to pick up a gadget and hold it and talk to it. You can talk to it, and it'll focus that right to your ear, so no one else in the room can hear it unless you want everyone else to hear it. The houses of the future will be smart. In other words, they will reflect light, turn themselves off when they're not in use, and you won't have to cook every morning. You know, all people making bacon and eggs every morning. All you have to do is put it, well, I better tell you this first. In the automobile factories, they spray the bottom of cars with a rubber-like material so they won't drive you crazy when it's raining. It absorbs sound. So your cars, you can't hear every drop of rain hitting it. So a guy has to spray that first under the car, and the computer follows every motion that he makes. From then on, machines do it. So you will make bacon and eggs the way you like it, whoever you like for breakfast, in front of the surface computer. And it'll pick that up so that everybody doesn't do the same thing every fucking morning. The oven and the refrigerator and all that shit around. Everybody buys a refrigerator. In the future, you won't have that. I'll describe the future. I just ask you, please, don't take out patents on these things. Okay? I can't afford to patent everything I think of, so I released a lot of stuff. The oven, instead of having a hot plate, you put a pot on it, and it boils the water. All the pots of the future have a pinnacle sticking up in it. This is a sectional view of a pot with a pinnacle. The heater is in the pinnacle, so the heat only goes through the soup. Do you understand that?
No, can you explain it again?
Pots have a hollow sticking up, and the heater is on the oven. And you put that pot over it, and it just heats the soup, not the whole area.
The whole kitchen.
Now, the electric company would hate that product. Okay?
Because you're not using the whole kitchen.
Now, all your pots and all your pans will be designed to maximize the use of heat. Now, geothermal energy is the heat of the earth. There's enough geothermal energy to supply all the nations with 10 times the energy they use, just that alone. Then there's temperature differential between the top of the ocean and bottom. Bottom is generally cool, while the top is cool and the bottom is warm. Those temperature differences can generate electricity. All water spilling over anything generates electricity, not just the spillways and turbines. You can generate enough electricity from all the rivers and waterways alone to operate everything in the world without anything else, any other source. No wind generation, anything else. There's more energy out there. I'm not talking about the sun alone, which has more than we can use. So I'm saying that the system you live under deprives people. Patents, when you take a patent out, other nations can use that for growing food faster or better. But they can't because you got a patent on it. So patents will belong to everyone in the nation, but all inventors and all people be taken care of, medically and every other way. Do you understand that? Since everybody has access to wristwatches or anything they want, the only thing that's private is after the change, you may have some original Picasso paintings. Okay? So if you have about 100 paintings that you like, we asked you to put it on tour so others might enjoy it. She said, no, they're mine. So we put that in the local bulletin. She said, no, they're mine. And pretty soon you'll be pushed by your neighbors to put that out. We don't twist your wrist. You understand? She said, no. That's all you have to do.
I have a question about the housing situation. Now, say this house right here has the best view out of any house.
Yeah.
what person gets that house? What does it do?
They don't get
Someone wants
into
a better
that
view.
city with that value system.
I understand the thinking will be different, but
But if many,
Let's say there's an less desirable job during the transition. Coal mining is not very pleasant. So whatever it is, cleaning out the washrooms. In France, they have washrooms that are self-clean. Did you know that? All right, now, so we can make we don't need any dirty jobs. But during the transition, if you have a dirty job, you work 2 hours a day, you get 3 days off, or you get a month's vacation instead of a week and a half or 2 weeks. You just vary the reinforcement. You get anybody to do anything. You understand what I'm saying? It's very easy to get people to work in hospitals instead of working 3 hours. If a guy that's very heavy, say, shits in bed, the nurses have to turn him over, clean the bed. There's a section of bed that pulls out. If he has to defecate, he can. But instead of rolling over, the bed itself has two cases, and it leans and he rolls over. You don't need people to do that. You don't need people doing diagnostic work. In other words, when you go to medical school, they'll show you a certain type of skin disorder and tell you that's psoriasis. So then you look at something else and they, oh, that pattern's measles. You have to remember those patterns. That's part of medical training. But all you have to do is photograph every known skin disease, every known skin disease. Then you hold your hand in front of an analytical scanner, and it scans connected to the best dermatologist in the world, and you get the immediate prescription for that. And then you don't need a guy saying, not sure, Dr. Jones, can you come in here? These guys been around a lot. You know, that's a form of Jamaican malaria. It's a little different than malaria found in the South Seas. And he points out the difference. So all those things, everything a person learns can be programmed. We can make a desktop analytical diagnostician in an hour and a half. Instead of wiping the baby's ass, sending him to school, again, he goes to medical school, then he works as a waiter while he's going to school, because he doesn't have the money. So we can make those things. All we do is hold your hand up, tell us the right way. Because the doctor is only comparing what he sees with what he learned. So that's what I mean by most professions. 90% will be displaced. And if you look at the auto industry, people used to assemble cars. Now you'll see a whole bunch of computers pick up the doors and put them on and the wheels. Have you noticed that in the automobile companies? Now, automation is an ongoing process. If you continue the system, the money system, with automation coming in, the people won't have the purchasing power to buy the things. So that's the end of the system. No system can freeze and keep going forever, because things change. So you can delay it, you can delay change for a year, but it'll break down. That's where you're at now. You're at a turning point in the way the world does its business, conducts affairs. People are looking more so now. There'll be no solutions except one nation conquering other nations, turning prisoners loose. America has the largest prison population, and they're privatized a lot. So what will happen, they're going to have to turn the prisoners loose. And first, the prisoners that are not too dangerous. Guys that were caught gambling or prostitution, they'll turn them loose first. Then later on they'll return the others loose. Then it'll be too difficult to manage, and they'll call out the Army and Navy in the impoverished areas. Say you have to be in your house at 9 o'clock. No walking around the streets at night. Because crime is going to accelerate. It's just crosses continuous. It's not going to work. And if you know about the Venus Project, talk to people about it. Talk about what we're trying to do. There's no Fresco in charge. Because who makes the decision in the Venus Project? I want to tell you, this is a very important part of it. No one. Here's how it works. We take samples of the soil, say, from all over America. Let's say we just do it. It goes to Central Agriculture. There they analyze the soil. And by the contents, the agronomists, not farmers, tell you it's best to grow beets for 3 years, then change to carrots. That's not an opinion. That's a finding. There's no more, what do you think? What do you think? What do you know? So we do research in different areas. When a new drug comes out, we try it experimentally. For example, they do chemotherapy and radiation therapy, which is very, very painful, very unpleasant, and doesn't usually save the person. So what we would do is take cancer cells in the future. If I kicked a bucket, you can tell this to your fellow medics. They could take cancer cells and keep them alive and treat the cancer growth itself, not the person, until you gain control. But your problem is not treating cancer, heart disease, or cystic fibrosis. Your problem is living systems. So you cultivate living tissue and control its rate of growth, faster, slower. Once you gain control of living systems and living organisms, you learn how to control them, then you approach a disease. This way, not only researchers doing medical research, they're asked all over the world. The whole system is wrong. And you got airplane designers, by the way. When I was at Wright Field, they built a $50 million wind tunnel. And I said I was just a corporal. I just didn't want to go to military. So I said, that wind tunnel is a nothing thing. I said that to a major. He said, what do you mean? He got angry. I said, you got to give me at least a half hour, then you can put me in the clinic. He said, fair enough. So I said, the wind tunnel says that this is the best shape for an airplane. That's what the wind tunnel does say. But you need a radar in front, so you put a ball there. You need a machine gunner in the back, so you put a machine gunner. Then you need a pilot's cabin with a glass sticking up. Then you need a gunner behind them to protect them. You can't retract the bomb bay doors if they're compound curved. They have to be straight, then they can travel up the track. So what the hell do you want a wind tunnel for? Just build what you need. Okay? So why don't they do that? I said, because they're assholes. He said to me, I got to talk to the colonel about you. We got to get you a private lab. He talked to the colonel. The colonel said, why doesn't he go to OCS? He said, because he hates the military and everything connected. He said, I don't want to talk to him. I couldn't see the colonel. I didn't know, I wasn't tactical then enough to get to him. But anyway, I would have turned the army around at Wright Field, but I didn't have enough information and technique for doing that. Do you understand this example? Okay. That's why you have to be able to say, I addressed a bunch of policemen years ago, see how they reacted. I said, we really don't need policemen. They said, you gotta have them. You gotta call them in case of emergency, I said, this is how we can do away with it. I can put a little gadget. If you don't know what a chimograph is, there's a cylinder that scribes earthquakes and other things. You've seen that, I'm sure. I put a chimograph in every automobile where it says 60 miles an hour. If you go 80 miles an hour, the chimograph registers. Anything above the regulated speed, you have to mail that in once a week. So if you want people to drive safely, you can do that. Everybody doesn't understand what I'm talking about. This cylinder is in your car. If you violate the regulation, no left turn in a right turn district, it's on the chimograph. Every month you have to tear that and mail it in, all your violations. So the policeman said, yeah, but that'll put us all out of work, the motorcycle cops and all that do it. So I said, well, what about a school district? It says 15 miles an hour, school district, children crossing. Be careful. Drive slowly. They leave it up to you. But you can't always notice everything around you. And you don't always obey those rules. So I have a pavement that looks like a comb. And when the kid wants to cross it, he presses a button and it turns up so no car can hit a kid. Do you understand what I'm saying? Anybody that doesn't? It's a lightweight structure that turns up. When that kid presses the button, the red light goes on, just turns up so the kid can cross the street. So I said to the policeman, by the way, I can design a system near the school so you can't do more than 14 miles an hour. School, you can press on the gas all you want to, but the power output, that's finally going beyond. So I tell the cops that we don't have burglary because people have access to information, have access to the necessities of life. Why should they break into a store and steal? If they can't change human nature, then I show a film on changing human beings. You understand? Every job can be phased out as long as it's a process that you learn. You can put that in a laptop. They're not there yet. The laptop doesn't tell you what to do. But in the future, say you want to pick a home. You want to pick the home you want to live in. You sit in front of a plastic bubble and you talk to it. That's the architect. I want a home. The bubble says, what kind of home? Most people are not sure. So different homes appear to rotate. And you say when you're ready, stop, something like that. And the next thing you say is, I'd like to see the floor plan. The roof lifts off. You and your wife or your friend or your partner, or if you're gay, your male partner looks at the plan and says, can you move the children's room next to the adult bedroom? Meaning this matter, and it moves right as you talk. Then she says, I'd like the washroom is a certain way, and as you talk, it changes. And then it says, would you like a virtual experience? You walk into another room, and the house you talked about appears as a virtual reality. She says, I didn't think the sink would be that low. It's a say when it moves up. So you get exactly the kind of house you want, not what some architect think you want. Everybody doesn't understand that? How much can you do with that today? Oh, we can do a lot of things. There are materials that can change color by temperature. There are materials that can change color by command. There are machines today that can write what you talk about. See? So when a person, this is a true thing, I'll tell you. Somebody wrote Somerset Maugham and said, Somerset Maugham is considered a good writer, great writer. She said, I want my son to be a great writer. What should I do? What school should I send him to? He said, don't send him to any school. Give him $300, turn him loose in New York, and tell him not to come back for a year. You'll have something to write about. When people go to school and want to become writers, so they got a formula. Same with movies. You can't show everything being okay. For example, in ancient Rome, it was normal for Saturday and Sunday people to come and see the Christians being fed to lions. But they used to starve the lions to make it more exciting and tear the clothes off the Christian people so the lions would have an easier job of tearing them to pieces. So the whole family used to come, and the kids would say, Daddy, can I come next week to see Christians being fed to lions? And Daddy would say, if you behave yourself. Now you think those kids are nuts? No. That was normal to their environment. You go to a circus today, you watch two men punch the hell out of each other because you're brought up in that kind of environment. You like football, baseball, sports. None of that will exist in the future. It makes people unhealthy, aggressively. They get sore at each other. They don't come over and say, hey, you did a great job. Even in football or baseball, they don't walk over you. Tennis, a little bit of that. But most sports are not good. Wrestlers jump on each other. If you guaranteed to take care of that guy after his injury, it'd be all right, but you don't. You keep punching guys in the head, and they become cerebral insufficiency. You understand that? That's why people will never go to an air show to see a girl fly upside down through a hangar. Gee, she's great. If she crashes, you should have been there. You missed fire of 14 planes, 8 people killed. People are all stick bastards in this culture. What they demand is unhealthy. Yes. Thank you. Did I get it?
You're on HD now.
Anyway, it's important that I get this information across to you. Now, whenever I say I know two people in the same environment, it's never the same environment. They don't know how to make an identical generator of behavior. So you never give kids ratings in school. You got passing mark, you got a failure. Once he said, what did you get? Then you've been all kinds of distorted behavior. I'm smarter than you. Jealousy, envy. So in school, you have to learn how to upgrade certain people and do that with everybody. So everybody learns at the best rate for them. You no longer grade people. And you no longer get your PhD, and that's it. School continues all through life. That's an emergent society. An established society, you get your PhD and you're out there and you're working. See, nobody will ever learn everything about everything. So you're always learning new things. That's why the old folks, people my age, sit on a rocking chair and talk about the good old days. When I was 21, I was a horse's ass. At 35, you learn a little more. If you fall in love at 14, then you fall in love at 35, it's different. Your standards keep changing. So it's very hard for people to marry young and go on indefinitely. The average marriage today lasts about 5 years. Because people aren't trained for change. In this society, they will expect change and look forward to change, not be threatened by it. If a new machine comes in my factory, I don't say to you, you now work 3 hours a day, your pay is increased by $40 or something, and your vacations increase. I get rid of you. It's called downsizing. So new machines, the Luddites in England, they try to smash machines, because they're a threat to people. In the future, there'll be a blessing. There'll be no dirty jobs, nobody breaking your window or raping your sister. All that's weeded out. People have sex when they're able to. And you no longer you have to show people, you have to teach them a lot of things, of course. There's such a thing called dynamic equilibrium in nature. That means if you have 100 acres here, and you have 2 fox and 4 rabbits, or 6 rabbits, and rabbits eat the roots of plants. If a drought comes, the rabbits die and the fox die. But if there's lots of roots growing, the rabbits will multiply, so will the fox. But the fox can't multiply beyond the carrying capacity of that environment. In other words, if you produce more people than the earth can feed, you're going to have riots, hunger, crime. So we must study the carrying capacity of every regional district of the earth and maintain a population in accordance with the carrying capacity, not Fresco's opinions. You understand, I'm not a dictator, but you understand that. That is a bunch of scientists telling people what to do. First we measure how much transportation do we have, how much arable land area, that tells how many people the earth can support. Then you do a global survey of national health, all kinds of physical diseases. You build your hospitals in accordance with your survey. You don't put up a hospital, hope you get enough clients for the next 4 years. Because hospitals go bankrupt. The system is no good. It's detrimental in every area. I can't think of anything this system has except technology. We're moving forward in that area. Other areas, we're backward. You can't live to yourself anymore. Somebody said, well, let's make this for America. The hell with the rest of the world. Let them solve their own problem. If you do that, and the Russians and Chinese do nuclear experiments in the ocean and have wars, they're going to pollute the rest of the world. So we've got to bring all the nations of the world together. Here's how you do it. All right, now, these are things I'm sure you guys don't know about. There used to be a place called Ellis Island, where people would come to America. We wanted all kinds of people to come, because there's opportunities. We needed people to work. And the Arabs came with their 10 wives and 15 wives. The guy says, you can only bring 1 wife. He says, why? Where he come from, everybody has a lot of wives. I said, well, in America we have 1 wife. He said, you have 1 wife and you don't even get along. We have 10 wives, they all get along with each other. So they argue, and there's no right or wrong way. There's no right and wrong. All that's bullshit. Depends on the culture you're coming from. See, so we base our decision-making upon a global survey. Then we break down the differences in nations, not by attacking their religion or their social customs. What you do is you talk about things we all have in common. All nations need clean air, clean water, arable land, and a relevant education. Relevant education means no business courses, no courses in professions that are parasitic, that don't do anything. Okay? They know how to farm, they know how to operate farm equipment, or design automated equipment to do that. Is that clear? So that's the kind of professions you have in the future. Professions that make the world a better place. There's no profession to take advantage of your position. There's no gambling casinos, no need for them. Now, most millionaires that I've met are very stupid people. They know investment banking, they know money systems, but they don't know how to live. So one of those guys that worth $4 million gets another $2 million, he buys a gambling casino. He doesn't have to have any more money. He can live any way he wants to with $4 million, or 10 million, or 2 billion. What do you need that kind of money for? You think a guy like, the guy that made his money, Bill Gates, you think that he has a way of thinking? No, he doesn't. He'll build a big house with a lot of rooms, with a lot of guests in a swimming pool. But he doesn't know what to do with his life. Because you don't learn in school how to relate to people, how to get along, how to find meaning in your own life, and select a direction. All the things that are absolutely necessary, you don't get in school. And your parents don't teach you, because they don't know. So I'm saying there is other ways of doing things. And it would take us about 10 years to change the surface of the earth to what you would call paradise. And when I say the middle class live better than kings, everyone will live better than Bill Gates. You have no idea of what the future will generate. It will generate smart interiors, furniture that you sit on, that memorizes your body contours and adjusts to it. You'll have so many different things. Your computer puts you in touch with the world. 10 years ago, or say 11 years ago, what your laptop does would cost $10 million. You know? How many of you knew that? So your laptop is getting smarter, broader, wider, smaller, faster, and that's happening in all technology. So when I say the future will live better than Bill Gates, this is what I'm talking about. All you have to do is say to your oven, bacon and eggs, Chef Milani style. Got it. Now, the waitress said to me, will I be a waitress in your system? I don't mind, she said. I said, no, not at all. It's not my system. It's a system. The minute you sit at a table, the menu lights up. You understand that? It's not visible until you sit there. Then it scans you. Why does it scan you? You wear a ring or it tells you who you are. And if you're diabetic, it adjusts the food that comes up in the middle of the table to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Doesn't have to, how long you had that, are you on treatment, all that. Hospitals will be very different design. Right now they're designed by architects. In the future they'll be designed by social engineers. And say, well, what's a hospital for? Or what are your kids for? What do you have kids for? You have kids because that's the thing to do? Everybody has kids. You get married, you have kids. It's the result of fucking. People don't have sex to have kids. They mostly have sex, the kids result from it. So the more kids you've got, don't get mad at me. Think about what I'm saying. So the reason that I'm saying kids are false, because if you really like kids, you'd be talking to kids all your life. You spend time with kids because they're boring as shit. They have nothing new to say. The kid can say, lie. Look at, that's my daddy, and that's my mommy, and that's my sister. They can't say anything interesting. You say, oh, how cute. See? All that bullshit conversation will disappear because your options become thousands of different things you can do. You wouldn't want to wipe a baby's ass. You want a baby's ass wiping machine. and so people, if you ask people what they want, you know, if you go to an impoverished area of blacks, say, you say, what do you want? You have anything you want. You say, well, I like me a pool table. Because they don't even dream outside of the area they live in. And people think within their culture. If you ask an Indian, say Seminole Indian, what do you want? He says, I'd like a nice thatched hut on a reservation. He's not going to say clear water systems, arable land, nutritious food. He can't say that because he doesn't have that in his background. That's what I mean by people cannot exceed their environment. Now, how about some questions or disagreements or areas that you have problems with? Yes.
Okay, people all the time talk about how to get there. From my perspective,
We want to make
at
this
the
film.
root or at the radical, I think the question has to do with decision. I won't say governance, I won't say
I'm
politics,
going
I'll
to
say
try to
decision
answer that.
making.
And if I failed, you have to let me know. Say you didn't answer it.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, the system has to collapse. That puts people in, hey, what happened to my job? I can't get another job. You have to put them in a condition where they look for other things. Right now, they don't give a shit. All they give a shit about their personal lives. Most lives in monetary systems are self-centered. Do you understand that? What's in it for me? Okay. When they lose their jobs and can't get another job, and the Obama group is not able to solve the problem, and England begins to collapse, and France, and all the other countries, then they say, what else is there? Well, there's communism. Well, that didn't work. It became corrupt. So they will try different systems. Now, I don't say they'll accept this system. If they don't accept it, I feel very sorry for the human race. See, I'm on my way out, but most people have a long life to go. So I don't worry about it at all. But anyway, I'm saying that if they fail to gain this type of knowledge, if they fail to provide the funds for making this motion picture, this is all we can do, is show people the kind of world they can have in the next few years, not 1,000 years from now. The transitional phase will be painful. There'll be crime, corruption, through the transition if we get there. If the transition occurs, we start building a new city, we will have an open system in it, where we invite people from all over the world to live as guests in the city, see if they like it, then build 3 in Russia, 3 in China, 10 in France, and on and on until we merge. We can't, Wednesday morning, declare the earth common heritage. You can't do that. I have nothing to do with that. I only have to deal with people that are fucked up, governments that are corrupt. That's where we're at now. To get there, you have to go through the painful transition. And the decision makers will not be what you call decision makers. Let me tell you about it. It isn't, there are roboticists today, people that design robots, that are writing books on the machine takeover of the future. Let me tell you why that won't happen. Machines do not have ambition. They don't give a shit, they don't care about it. If you work your computer Saturday, Sunday, Monday in front of 10 other computers, it doesn't say, hey, you got to give that computer some time off. They don't give a shit. Right, so your computer, they don't also say, if it isn't this month, we'll get you next month, but we'll get you. They don't care. Airplanes fly, they say 2,000 miles an hour, let's say 3,000 miles an hour. You can't see an enemy coming if they fly that fast. So the Army has equipped military planes with radar, so scans the field well in front of you and tells you in the next 10 seconds the plane will appear on the scope. Now even then they've taken the decision away. When the pilot presses a button for machine gun bullets, none come out unless that plane is within the cone of fire. And anybody doesn't know what that means? It means where the bullets are. The Army now makes machine guns with a laser beam. When it's on the person, you press the trigger. If it's off the person, the bullet won't hit them. Do you understand what I'm saying? In the future, you can put mechanisms out there designed to shoot people you don't like. If this system goes on the way it goes, technology will be used the wrong way. We are not wise enough to enter space. I don't like the U.S. being the leader in space, because sooner or later, I know you'll have nuclear weapons going around. All you have to do is drop them. And I know that the Chinese, instead of building big armies, will do something brand new and different. This is what they're going to do. They're going to work on computer jamming systems. But you don't need to build big armies or warships or lots of airplanes anymore. All you have to do is design a system that will jam military computers. You understand that? In that way you can knock out armies, navies without weapons. Oh, yeah, that's the future. So the Pentagon is made up of old-time army men. They don't think this way until they're forced to. They will be forced to, because that will occur. I have no doubt about what I'm saying, whether I'm here or not, but the system could break down into a point of no return, where we damage the oceans and the air so badly, and human behavior so badly, that it's impractical to work it out. That's why when you leave here, you must talk to people. We don't have that kind of time for that. It's to do a survey all over the world, and we ask people from all over the world, tell us how many trucks they have, production factories, how well equipped they are, how much resources they have. Otherwise, we can't make decisions. You understand? The global survey, but they do not control people. Those machines that I've got there, none of them control people. Just production of goods and services, making it available. If a girl wants to live with 9 guys, a guy wants to live with 9 girls, if they all agree to that, you can live any lifestyle you want to, but you can't enforce it on other people. But every point of view is on the air. Now that's what liberty means, freedom. Otherwise, without a definition of freedom, you live in a free country, you know it's not free. It says no left turn when you leave the parking lot. There's all decisions are made for you. You want to work, you want to eat, you go to work. Or you apply for relief. But you got to fill out a form. It's all regulated. The minute you go to work for any industry, it's a dictatorship. When you punch that time clock, they don't say, what would you like to do? They tell you what you do, particularly the army. And by telling people what to do, you kill. The whole thing of humans is the ability and the social memory to work on problems. I would take all the soldiers, if I had any control, and send them back to college to become problem solvers. How to solve different types of problems. Imagine what would happen to the world if you took the army and made them problem solvers. Right now they're killing machines. You have to tell that to soldiers. Try to talk to them. And if you get enough soldiers in the right direction, they can't operate. Now, that's a hard thing to do, but you're living during the transition, and people will be rigidized, more so. Television will become less free, because they depend on people advertising. TV, having me on would be damaging to CNN. Not really. It'd be beneficial, actually, but they don't understand that. Other countries do. Other countries understand that I'm not talking about overthrow of the government. I'm talking about what you do in case it doesn't work. If the system falls completely, you install a resource-based economy. But it's got to fall. No one's about to install this unless it falls. So when doctors can't collect money from people, when they get more checks bounced, things don't work, I'd like you to know this. A lot of ministers during the Depression joined technocracy and the Socialist Party. Did you know that? Because they weren't collecting much money in church. So we will support people that don't want to live in this system. Suppose you meet Amish folks. They're brought up differently than we are. They don't want to live in that system. They want to live their own way. We will put up the buildings for them of fireproof materials. But if they say, I like wood, I like the feel of it and the smell of it, then in case it gets fire, it's your problem. We'll build you whatever you want. We'll support your ministers. You don't have to dig up nickels and dimes. And as long as they feel, as long as you don't threaten people to take anything away from them, I feel that they will in time turn around and join with us. But don't outlaw religion. Don't try to outlaw anything. Just present physical evidence to everything you talk about. And I think you can turn most people around. By the way, you don't have to change everybody. This country today, I say America, meaning all of the technical world, is probably on the backs of no more than 50 people that gave us all the wonderful things. If you turn off Boulder Dam, all the food would spoil, the lights would go out, traffic would stop, trains would stop, planes would stop. Now, everything you got is technical. There's nothing politicians give you. They can't. So I'm saying, we don't have technicians controlling you. They merely serve in their best area of interest. If you're an agronomist, grow food, I say, what do you do with exhausted soil? I say, that's an area we need a lot of research on, how to build soil. And he, if assuming he is an agronomist, he would say it takes 1,000 years for nature to produce 1 inch of topsoil. And we build cities right up on top of topsoil. In the future, we'll shave off the topsoil, put it in soil banks, because we don't even know what's important. Let me put it another way. Years ago, I wrote a little science fiction novel about people that came from another world to this world, and they want to know what we're like. And there's no information they get. Finally, they find big doors this thick It's called a safe. And they open them. And they find the same fucking death certificates, money, no history of medicine, how we got to be the way, the history of flying machines, the technology that made us what we are. All you got in banks is death certificates and money. That's the only safe place. How stupid can you be? So I do a lecture called The Limitless Dimension of Human Stupidity. And that has all of that shit in it. I'm trying to tell you, we live in a very bad world. It's much worse than you think it is. So you got to go to work when you leave here. You got to tell people, show them the books, show them the videotapes, and have a discussion. The reason I'm putting all this effort out for you is so if I kick the bucket tomorrow, you'll have something you can do. You know, so it isn't how long you live, it's the quality of your life. If I live to be 30 years old and learn a lot, I feel that's great. But if you live to be 104 and do nothing, I say it's a nothing thing. Okay? So is there anything anyone would like to, you'd like to visit the place? In the beginning of the movie, we also have scenery like two farmers walking down the road talking about the Wright brothers being crazy trying to build a flying machine. And they spit and they said, if the good Lord wanted man to fly, he'd have been born with wings. I says, yep. And then the right rifling putt-putts over and the jaw hits the paper and the false teeth drop down in the film. And he says, I've changed my mind. He didn't change his mind, he was changed by events. People can't open their cranial cage and read what lands association. You want to talk about the brain and eyes, eye disorders of the future? You know the little guy they put on the eye that splits it automatically and causes it to contract so you don't need glasses? Have you seen that system yet?
Well, we have all different kinds. Any cut in the front part of the eye is going to change the shape of it.
There's a thing about eyes and ears and sense of smell. Like you may have better vision than me, but I may have educated vision. I know every 10 degrees. You don't, you know what I mean? And I may even know what to look for when I look at things. We look at them differently based on our background. You understand? He may have better hearing than this fellow, but this fellow knows what to listen for. He's a musician. He knows exactly what's... You don't hear that by an orchestra leader, conductor, who knows what to listen for. So there's vision, educated vision, there's taste, educated taste, all that has to be talked about. And we have to bring up children so they can use most of their facilities well, instead of a person saying, I'm not creative, I'd like to write, but I don't even know how to start. It's very easy to be a great writer. You can learn in less than a minute. Principle. The principle of writing is all you have to do is take one scene of a woman standing at a cemetery with a tear coming out. Take it from there. The whole story is self-evident. Now, if you take another one, say a guy lying in a lifeboat with pursed lips and his canteen empty and the sun beating down, you can take that and build a story all around. You don't have to think of the whole story. You know, just show a war veteran on crutches, just show him walking, and then go into it. You see what I mean? That's how you write. But writers say, well, you just have to practice and write. You know, they don't give you detail. And it's a detail, like the way I teach children to draw like adults. I go right to it. You don't need to start at childish drawings. You don't need to do 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. Because when I was a kid, the teacher said 2 and 2 is 4. I says, 4 what? You know? So I said, in my early work of the lab, I'd have one drop dropped in a glass tube. And by turning on a certain range of sounds, that one drop becomes 6 drops by vibratory method. So sometimes 2 and 2 can make 20. You know, if you learn to think 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8, rote, your flexibility is limited. You think you understand that? You can take one drop of water, released by an eyedropper, generate different types of sound in that glass tube. That drop breaks into 20 drops or 2 drops, depending on the vibratory rate. You understand what I'm saying? Or do you interpret?
Yeah.
So, to think creatively it's best to be able, like if her says, I want to become a creative architect. I say, study seashells. You're going to make that paper cylinder. Study seashells. They have so many different shapes for your head to be filled with many different types of contours. But if you just study architecture, you're going to see all a house with pointy roof. They're all alike. Very, very little originality. So I want to show you something about the strength of materials, but if you try to remove that from the table, it'd be safer.
Are we going to remove everything?
Okay, so there you see one piece of paper, the paper I drawn, rolled into a cylinder, okay?
This can't hold a book.
You take it from there. You can't do anything with a straight sheet of paper. You can't hold up any weight. You can't make a good roof with it. It's always sagging, a straight sheet. But if you bend it into a circle, she's going to show you what it'll
I'm
do.
going to put the camera on
So
there.
you try your prediction too. Are you going to handle that?
Yeah, I'll use it.
Okay.
This one was filming.
You want to gather around and watch this? It's interesting.
Walk back and forth.
Get a heavy book, which you could never do with one. Let somebody feel the weight of that book.
I'm not going to do it. We do it. He wants to do that with every book. Is that on center there?
More to the left.
No.
That way.
More to the left.
Well, that'll work.
My
More.
left? It's,
One
That's,
more
that's
movement.
pretty good.
oh yeah. How about that way? Is that center?
That's a pretty heavy book on one piece of paper.
This one's a heavy one. Oops. It's just like one of these.
It's like the mega machines in the future will lower things down slowly like that.
Let me know when you think it'll go.
I'm gonna stand up.
Grab like 5 at a time.
Those
It's
are
a really heavy one.
weighty books.
Oh boy.
So I can do this arm.
That's why all the buildings around are contoured, because they're much smaller than straight sections.
That's why the eye is round. That's why the eye is
You
round.
could try to lift that off. It's pretty heavy when she gets.
Really heavy.
I'm still holding it together. That's great.
It's no trick.
No, it also right now it'd be very, very hard to like push the paper in too, correct?
Yeah.
Try carrying that away.
I'm good.
That's a heavy book.
Yeah, it is. This way.
Left. A little to the left.
Yeah, there you go.
Watch, I take a picture.
I'm always impressed by that. Well, they won't know whether that's a concrete cylinder or not. Is that what you expected?
No. I thought you were gonna put one book on it and say, yep,
Yep.
you can hold it up. It's higher than the paper now.
Yeah.
You couldn't even lift it.
That's more than
We used to have a competition.
It's pretty heavy too. This might do it.
Yeah.
This is really heavy.
Yes.
This is an hour long.
Yeah, then
Do like
More to the left.
This way? This one.
Oh boy.
Oh my god, that's... Is it wobbly?
Everybody go back.
That's a good one. Yeah. Had to try and lift all these. I can't.
You don't have to be an engineer to understand that. It makes a lot of difference.
Makes a lot of
when you design the building. That's why they're most of them contoured for that reason.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Yeah, I work in the customer service type of job,
yeah.
and people are relieved when they hear a human voice. Do you feel in the future that people will get tired of automatic voices saying do this, do that?
No, because the automatic voices will flex to their values. It won't be a repeat like a recording. It'll be a recording that understands. Like if you speak with hesitancy, you don't have to be insecure. In other words, it measures all those values. See, the trouble with the world today is we must photograph Elvis Presley 2 miles of film. On Einstein, maybe 500 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you photographed Einstein getting up, sitting down, his value system, interviews, then in the future, we could put that together. I'm sure you've heard you can't be two places at the same time. When Frank Sinatra sings, he's dead. He sings 4,000 places at the same time. In the future, we'll generate what you call virtual image of Frank Sinatra, singing in your rooms, full, standing there. The only thing that matters is you'll be able to put your hand through it. After that comes teletactile television, where you can touch people, shake hands with them. Now that seems far-fetched. Now, let me tell you a little bit about it. I took sandpaper and ran it under my finger years ago. It's over 50 years ago. And I put needles into my fingertip. So from the fingertip to the brain, the sandpaper running there tells me something rough under my fingers. But it's from the tip to the brain. But when you stick that same finger in cold water, the signals change. If you play back into the finger the same signals, if you make a recording of them, you'll feel sandpaper running hot or cold water, or a balloon as against a solid surface. You understand what I'm saying? So it isn't mysterious. Do you have difficulty with it?
Yeah, how do you record that?
You can make a recording from the needle inward. In other words, you run that through an amplifier and while the sandpaper is being moved under there. When you stick your hand in cold water, you take the signals from the nerve endings to the brain, which penetrate the nerve, and they go into a recording amplifier. And you play that back like your tongue has hundreds of holes on it. And when you eat bacon and eggs, it falls into that hole in your tongue. And on the bottom of the hole is a nerve. The bacon and eggs titillate that nerve a certain way. From the nerve ending to the brain, that's bacon and eggs. So if you learn what the titillation is of this nerve, you can play anything, steak, any taste, into any food anybody eats. So it's just a matter of a few years with nanotechnology. The world will be a far different place. They won't even record us in our history books. We're so fucked up. Won't make
They
a
won't
history.
remember. And that TED
This
Talk,
is a terrible society, but being brought up in it, it seems, hey, this is the greatest country in the world. A lot of people say, why can't people live in peace and harmony? That's so simple as that. How do you do that? So you have to know how to go to another country, and when they see you, they don't think you're there to exploit their resources. See, you have to undo all that. Like when I was in Dubai, I was talking to a member of the prince's family, and I said to him, I don't like our president one bit. I think he's dangerous. I'm talking about Bush. Extremely dangerous man, and I don't vote for him at all. And he said this, if I get Bush, I cut him to pieces. So you never knew. They said that's our friends in Dubai. They're not our friends. They need us for certain things. But I would say the world is pretty much against the United States. If you really, that's why I said that. I want to know where it was. When I went to China, I tried to talk to people about how do you feel about U.S. armament. That's when I got the bit about controlling the electronic systems. I said, instead of building a big army, although they're building a big army in rockets, their real aim is to make good electrical engineers and computer technicians to jam military systems. So all submarines, all aircraft characters depend on computers. So if you learn to jam that, you can wipe out the country. You can wipe out all production systems, everything else. So you don't spend your money. It's just a lot of money on aircraft and aircraft carriers and submarines. The submarines roll over $1 billion apiece. So if you use $1 billion in electronics, or 20 billion, you conquer the world. You see, if China wins, they will enslave the world for a period until technology evolves. Because the leaders of China are not technicians, they're politicians, unfortunately. And technicians tend to think that politicians know what they're doing. They're politicians, we're technicians. They think that one is just as good as the other. You're a musician, he's a farmer, I'm an electrical engineer. It's the electrical engineer and the agronomist that can grow a lot of food, not the farmer. You know what I mean? We don't know in government what is important, and the Bush administration dissolved the Scientific Advisory Board to the government. You know that? The man is a puppet of the establishment. Bush, real stupid guy. But Cheney is not very bright either. All these people are very dangerous. But there's nothing I can say except the system has to fall. And they will push anything liberal out and make up any stories. I could say he's a child molester. Get that rumor out there. If you get the rumor out there, it'll discredit you, whether you did it or not. Do you understand? Spread false rumors, and that'll come with the Venus Project. It isn't important enough yet, not that well fortified yet, for the rumors to start out.
That's what Alex Jones is trying to do.
What's that?
Alex Jones.
That guy's so stupid. Alex Jones?
Yeah. Alex Jones.
Yeah, he's
saying
a moron.
Make up all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, he said the Luciferian.
He asked me to be on the show,
Right after
and I
PJ was
refused
on.
it.
That was a joke. Did you see that?
Oh, it was completely ridiculous.
He acted like a child.
Oh yeah.
What did he
He
say?
acted like
He
a
just threw a tantrum and was just attacking Peter Joseph and oh, you're bubble-headed, intelligent, blah blah
he wouldn't
blah.
even listen. He was jumping around.
He said
like
it was
an
a satanic theosophical cult.
Cult?
Yeah. Venus is the morning.
Synonymous with Satan. I'm like, it's in Venus, Florida. You fucking
Is
idiot.
he wealthy?
He does a lot of outrageous conspiracy theory type things.
He makes
Really
weird.
crazy things.
Oh yeah, how can we get rid of them?
Is he a god?
That's what I want to know.
Is he religious?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very. He's got a very large following of Christian.
With a capital B.
I'll tell you.
Well, what I do
We got
is
lots of time.
with religious people when they come here, if they're a priest, and I say, I would wear that cross if I were you. I said, why not? They always say the same thing. God so loveth the world that he gave his only begotten son, sacrificed him. I said, according to the witnesses, Jesus arose and went back into heaven, so there's no sacrifice. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Then I said, why not? Why shouldn't I wear the cross? I said, because that's what man did to Christ. It has nothing to do with his teachings. They used to crucify people that criticized the government and establishment. So if you wear that around your neck, it's what man did to Christ. So he says, you've confused me. So I said, suppose your brother was accused of raping and murdering a female, and they hung him. 10 years later, they find out he did nothing like that. Are you going to wear a noose with your brother hanging from it? You got the message.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, they don't put anything together.
Last moment, yeah.
The Bible is one batch of contradictions. For example, just before they crucified Christ, they told me that God was omnipotent, knew everything, made every galaxy, every bug, every planet. So just before they crucified Christ, he looked up and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. As though God would, gee, thanks for telling me that. I don't know that. No, that's an insult to deity. But the people that read the Bible don't seem to put those things together. In fact, they don't seem to put anything together. So what I do is say that the church sold out to the monetary system. It honors people that are wealthy, where Christ would have chased them out, said, if you have any more money than you need to live, give it to the poor. A rich man asked him, can I enter the kingdom of heaven? He said, oh, the same chance a camel has going to the eye of a needle. And we worship all the rich people today. They're all on high places. And I've heard nothing dumber than this guy that puts up big buildings and sells. What's his name?
Donald Trump?
You're thinking of Trump. Yeah, Trump.
Trump, Donald, is a real asshole. No information at all. And they got him on TV, has nothing to say. Military men have nothing to say, except we need more cannons and more rockets and things like that. They have nothing new to say. And all the people they interview on TV are people usually that are pro-establishment. So it isn't a democracy unless you have different points of view. And with different points of view, you're going to produce confusion in this country. A lot of riots, people will be shooting other people. Unfortunately, they don't know how to solve problems. When I was a kid, all we had was cowboys with 2 guns. They never solved problems. They shot the disagreement. And all blacks were always seen running away from ghosts in all the movies. And Mexicans sleeping in the sun under their big sunroof. Lazy sun sleepers. And our movies were about Italian gangsters only.
Yeah.
And there were all kinds of Irish gangsters before them. After the Italian gangsters, there was a new lot gang, Jewish gangsters. So we have Irish gangsters, all different types, which isn't shown on television. We should show, or we can, but in our movie, we show a lot of stuff. A little girl says to her daddy, you've explained it very well, she says, are we going to Grandma's house this afternoon? And Daddy says, yes. And the little girl says, does she still live in that old house? He says, yes. Why? Well, maybe she has pleasant associations with it. And Grandma's house is one of those cable suspended things. Oh, beautiful, awful precedents. You know, fantastic architecture. But let's just get the audience. Hey, she's old-fashioned. She doesn't update her house every 5 years like everyone else does. See, so it's not a fixed society. So the kid looks at the house as old-fashioned. But the audience will look at it as light years ahead. And we show a lot of stuff in the home of the future. We show how all energy conserved, how buildings have no termites, no dust, because the air pressure in the building is just a little higher than outside, so no dust ever comes in. And then we show electrostatic air filters in the building that take out, so you don't have to cover your mouth when you sneeze, and most diseases will be taken care of differently.
We already do that in operating rooms. There's no reason we can't do them everywhere.
You know why we don't. So anyway, there's so much to be done. And so much, when people say, well, machines do all the dirty work, what will people do? Children will travel, scuba diving, sailing boats, and studying, and going to school free of charge, and have craft shops, machine shops to make anything you want to make. When you submit your stuff to the government computers, it'll say that we don't have enough information to make a decision, but you can go to this lab and have it tested. Suppose you have good ideas, social ideas, but you're a hunchback, and you lisp when you speak. People don't think you're smart. Normal people are very dangerous. So we take ideas from people, and we have the best voices in the country read the project. They vote on it. There's a little guy in a wheelchair that can't move. You understand? Because you don't have objective viewing. You view the personality speaking. So there's so many things to do. You know, unfortunately, we will send people trained in the Venus Project to Africa to talk to Afro-Americans or Africans because they don't like Whitey. What the hell is he doing there? You know what I mean? Whitey comes to make our life better. What bullshit. We will have Arabs address the Arab nations. There are many Arabs that come here that we can talk to that already learned about it. We have Frenchmen that are writing about it, so that's the best way to go at it. Don't send a blonde area where all the girls have very black hair. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. People look at you and they judge what you say by their past experiences. You can't do that. So you're dealing with sick people, and our job is social therapy, not reason. I want to emphasize that, not reason. I brought a Japanese kid home one day. How many noticed? And my mother said loud enough, "I don't want that kind around." And he said, "All right, so long, Jack." And I try to reason with my mother. He says, "Let us sit and reason together in good books. Use science and reason." It didn't work at all. So my mother rejected him, and I said, if I can't change my mother, how am I going to change the world? So I said to my mother, I was swimming in the East River. This is not true. And Masato worked on the boat, and I was drowning because there's a high wall. I couldn't get ashore, and he threw a lifesaver to me. She said, "My God, you mean he saved your life?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, I was so rude to him. I said, so please, ask him to come for dinner. I want to beg him to forgive me." So I said, "I don't know if he'll do that." She said, "Please, John, I haven't read you it. I wanted her to do that." So I said, "Masato, when you come in the door, she's going to hug you and kiss you and maybe even be weeping about how she treated you." I said, "Expect that." So she did it. She grabbed him, but at dinner she's really talking to him, really. So I walked out and came back about 20 minutes or so later when Masato went to the washroom. I don't know how long it's been, but anyway, I said to my mother, "What do you think?" She said, "You know, he's just like you and I." So I said, "Yeah, but he's a member of the Yellow Race." So I went like that. She says, "You shouldn't do that. He saved your life." I said, "But he's still a member of the Yellow Race." And she's arguing with me. The reason I did that is to get her to think of all the other arguments. And she did. And a month later, she liked Masato. Really did. Always put her arm around him and calls him son. That's really liking him. And me at the same time. So,
Did she ever find out that your story?
Yes.
She did.
Once that was established, I said, "Mother, he never saved my life." She said, "You little devil, I would have never opened the door." But she was glad I did that. But, you know, you can only do so much. But reason doesn't work on some people. You have to always tell them the truth. I always told my mother exactly what I did. But I could not reason with her. Her brain shut down on that. You know, so I found out the hard way. I used reason. And in all the scientific books on language, it says, be honest, explain things as it truly is. It doesn't work that way. The real world is very different. I used to know a gangster that wanted to get laid a lot, and Woolworths 5 and Dime had engagement rings that sold for 10 cents a piece. They looked like the expensive rings. And he bought a whole batch and would give it to a girl to get laid, and oh, you shouldn't have done that. So, and anyway, they were impressed. They felt he really loved her. He really didn't. He just wanted to get laid. He used devices like that. And then I met another guy that worked with Al Capone. And he came to see me because he had a problem. I said, well, what's your problem? If you don't tell me what it is, I can't help you. He says, I have 2 Rolls Royces, and I like to drive them through Boogie Town, meaning black environment, and watch all those kids look at my Rolls Royce as I drove around slowly. I go around the block several times. It makes me feel good. So why do I do that? I said, because when you were a kid, you were looking at a guy driving a fancy car, and he got so much esteem from the people looking at him, he wanted to feel that. I said, you're that same asshole. I said that to him. He said, nobody ever called me that. I said, well, I'm telling you what you are. You throw big parties on your yacht, have a lot of people come, a lot of girls, a lot of sex. They're not your friends. They're people taking advantage of your economic situation. He said, nobody ever said that to me. Well, I'm saying it to you. So I said, that's why you drive your car around, that's why you throw the parties, because you have no self-sufficiency. He says, yeah, what can I do about it? I said, you have to read. I gave him certain books. Then he came back 2 months later. He says, I can't talk to my friends anymore. I said, that's part of the problem. The more you learn about this system, the more distant you become from people. That's why I ask you to talk to people, break them in. If you don't do that, you'll just drift away and you do nothing useful.
I've noticed that
And
a
if the
lot.
system you use doesn't work, change it, come at it another way. That's what I did with my mother and other people. And when I spoke at Columbia University in New York, one of the professors got up and said, would you use profanity if your mother were here? I use profanity, obviously. So I said, Mother, will you stand up? I took care of that. So try to fortify your answers to these questions, you know. Okay, guys. Go to work. We work all the time. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, no vacation. We work because the thing is going downhill, and I'm afraid of the future human race. So we can't take time out to hope it'll all work out by itself. It won't. I only see it a form of fascism, an American brand. They're trying to install it now. Fascism means severe control and rigidity and privatization of everything. So I hope there's nobody that's angry here for anything I said. Anybody, did you learn anything today?
So much.
You raise your hand?
Also wisdom.
Okay, as long as you got something useful. Yes, okay. I wanted to explain one of the books that you are using is this one. Called The Best That Money Can't Buy. It's about the moneyless society. Okay, this is the government. Halfway they go into all the pictures of the objects you've seen. And cities in the sea, it covers the city as a system, the government, transportation, and near the end you have offshore living, and you have floating domes, and then the Venus Project, what we've done out here. Now, we don't own the helicopter that you see here. People fly in, they drop in literally with helicopters in front of another dome building. So the book is, when you get the book and you're through reading it, put it in a school library or somewhere so other people can get it. And call up different stations, ask them to present the Venus Project. You're tired of hearing military people and Americans that don't know anything else but force. You want to know if there's any other way of doing it. There are many other ways of doing it. So,
Are there any other questions?
The other takes an animal.
I have a question. Jacques was talking about, you mentioned that for your next phase you want to get this movie made.
Yes.
Do you have like a plan laid
Yeah,
out?
I'll tell you a little bit about the script. Just a little bit of it.
But I'm saying like an overall plan from here to there, like here are the steps, or here's like a diagram, something we
Yes.
can download or
Well,
work off
I
of.
can't release that until you get a guy like Spielberg to come out here.
Are you talking about the different steps from here there?
If
It
you know
really doesn't.
anybody in the film business, this film will make a lot of money for the money people, but we want a small portion of it to go to the Venus Project, because that's the only way.
It really doesn't depend on us, because we don't have money, we don't have power. It depends on what everybody else does. It depends on who they introduce us to. You know, we've tried a lot, we keep going, we work around the clock. So we have steps of what to do and things to do, but we don't have the power to do it. So it depends on what everybody else does to introduce us. So more people get into it, maybe somebody can do the movie. If we can do the movie, then we can reach a lot of people. So you know, we have lots of things we could do, but we don't have methods to do them. We don't have funding to do them.
But do you understand what I'm saying? If you're thinking in terms of like the larger movement, right? You two are here, you're doing this, you're hoping to do the movie. And I'm thinking that's like one part of a much larger plan. Is there a much larger plan?
Yeah,
that
that's
you
what
have
all
laid out?
this is. That's what all this is, technically, how to do it, what to do. Yes.
Build and demonstrate how a city would work.
After
It's-
the
it's a
film, we want to
long-term
show at the
project.
end of the film that we want to show that we're breaking ground, hopefully, and then have people come and join us. And the first city would be a research city. It wouldn't be someplace where people could come and retire nicely. It would be a research facility where the people there would be doing the designs for the next city. And we'd be doing books and videos and material to get this out there. And we'd have a theme park of the future where people could come and walk out and be smarter after they go through that city. I mean, that theme park. And then we'd have people come from all over the world and then build the next city and the next city in different countries. So we have all sorts of plans, and we have all sorts of technology to back it up, and all sorts of prints. And you know, the movie's not just a movie; it's a plan of action, and a social therapy at the same time for the transition to make it easier. Otherwise, it's just going to be chaos and fascism, and they don't know where to go after that. So all this is the plan.
I see a lot of trouble ahead unless we work at it. So I think it'll happen in Europe first, because they're much better informed than we are.
Yeah, they're on the renewable
We've got too
energy
much
track.
managed news to control people. In Europe, they're more skeptical and they're more open to ideas. Because their long history of war and pain and suffering, we've never had that.
Yeah.
Just a shame
Another
that it
good
takes
piece, I
time.
think.
There's no way I can press it unless I meet the guy with the cigar. Just let's do it. You know, there are people in that position, like a guy named Skouras. Is that his name, Skouras? A Greek fellow.
Yes.
A guy like that, he gives all kinds of money to universities, and Roxanne and I build everything here.
I'm not sure.
You know,
I'm
if we
probably
had
wrong about
support, we'd be able to go forward very fast.
Time wouldn't be as busy.
Because we know exactly what to do, phase by phase.
Yeah, we haven't met anybody who will help finance it. I mean, we've been financing it ourselves through outside work, our outside
Well, the guy
jobs for the last 30
Financed
years.
Gazeki, right? Gazeki.
Yeah, somebody gave
The
us
guy, a millionaire came out
$250,000
here
to Gazeki.
and he said to me, I think I told you, if you're so smart, how come you're not rich? And I said, you're rich, how come you're not smart? So he said he's going to have a guy film my life and what I do. And the guy left out all the social stuff of the film. He didn't want to rock the boat. And the guy that put up the money, he asked the filmmaker, Gazeki, he said, how much would it take to make a film on Jock? And the guy said, 350,000, is it?
Yeah.
And he gave him a check for half the amount, and then he gave him the rest
Yeah,
when
if
he
we had
finished.
that funding, we could have done a great film.
But we had no part in that.
Yeah.
But I just want
You
you to know
really
what he
didn't
did.
understand this direction.
So I asked him, I said, why are you putting up the money for this film? Do you care about people? He said, no, I don't give a shit about people. I give a shit about you will make me a lot of money. I just want you to know that.
Gazeki said that?
No, the
reason
person who
for the
backed
guy
Gazeki.
putting up the money.
$350,000.
He did it as a business venture.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Peter Joseph.
Did the best job.
Peter Joseph.
Curious
It's
about
that guy.
that.
They said, all right, what can we do about it? So the system stayed. He said he didn't know. Until Roxanne sent him one of our books. And he flew out here right away and he shot for days. And the Venus Project addendum was partly about the Venus Project, but the next one's all about the Venus Project.
Well, no, it's going to be more about, he's going to interview a lot of people and he's going to try and make it mainstream, but it's going to be a lot more on the Venus Project.
He's a
Yeah.
very nice guy,
Yeah.
very flexible, not rigid, you know. He was brought up as a Catholic, but evolved out of that.
Me too.
Okay, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Been sober for
It
6
was
years.
very hard. I asked Einstein once whether he believed in God. He said, which one? And he wrote the foreword to the book called Man and His Gods. Did you know that?
No.
People think he believes in God. He wrote the foreword to that book. That book is about how one religion influenced another, the whole story. Man and His Gods by Homer W. Smith. That'll be on our website. On our website, you can find a whole list of books. So I'll send you guys underway, and we'll get back to work. You can pick up your tapes, Roxanne.